those present in the chamber, and we don't currently have anyone watching online. I'd like to declare the meeting open at 9:39 a.m. And I'd like to acknowledge the Whanamurka people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. I would also like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians who are present. And I'll now go through some housekeeping. As we're not currently live streaming, I won't mention the first part. Councillors are reminded that parliamentary privilege does not extend to this chamber as it does for state and federal parliamentarians, and you are reminded to be cognisant of this in any comments which you may make during the course of this meeting. I'd also like to remind councillors to use the microphone when speaking. At the moment we don't have to worry about that. And for any councillors or officers who are attending virtually, please use the mute button when not speaking, also not applicable right now. In the event of an evacuation, I would like to ask you to remain calm and follow my directions. The emergency exit is through the gallery doors to your left and down the stairwell to exit onto Bloomfield Street. All members of the public present at the meeting must A. Not without the prior approval of the chairperson, make any audio or video recording or take any photographs. B. Remain quiet and not disrupt the meeting in any way. C. Not bring into the meeting any signs, placards or items that may cause a hazard or interfere with any person present. D. Be suitably dressed. And E. Turn all mobile devices to silent mode and leave the meeting to take any calls. As chairperson, it is my responsibility to warn a member of the public present at a meeting who is not complying with any of these requirements and may, with or without such warning, require the person to leave the meeting and not return for such period as the chairperson decides. This period may include future meetings. I'll also take a moment to remind councillors of the standing orders, and everyone should be fully well aware of those. If you do want to make a comment, please don't mumble. Please say it loud enough that it can be recorded and heard by all. Please show respect to not only other councillors and the chair, but all staff members present. I've taken the time over the 9 weeks to watch previous council meetings, and I request that we respect each other and you direct any questions through me as the chair. You may refer to me as mayor or chair. I'll move on to number 2, leave of absence. And I've been advised that Councillor Hewlett is unwell at the moment and will seeking a leave of absence. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mitchell. No, he's not now. Put the motion. Declared unanimously. Thank you.
Councillor told me.
Thank you, Councillor.
Oh.
And Councillor Talty,
No,
you'll be fine at the moment to continue?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'd now like to remind councillors to sign the attendance sheet for today's general meeting, which can be found in diligent boards. This must be completed before the meeting concludes. I'm moving on to agenda item number 3, which is a devotional segment. We don't have a devotional segment today due to illness. However, we do have condolences. And councillors, I've just been made aware of a condolence.
yes. Condolence.
Yeah, and Councillor
Bishops.
Bishop, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of a much-loved member of Redland City, 93-year-old Miss Virginia Ridgely, who was an active volunteer at Redland Art Gallery ever since it opened, and she was also a talented musician, artist and educator. Her family said Virginia eventually had heart failure, but she did not waste a beat during her life. She was a mother of 5, grandmother of 9, and a great-grandmother of 5. She loved her family, attended birthday parties, and kept a catalogical photographic file of every single family member arranged with meticulous precision. Born Virginia Ann Ridgely on 1st of October 1931 in Adelaide, her father died when she was 4. She was raised on a sheep station, riding a horse to school with her sister, and the horse would wait until they finished school and then take them home. She went to boarding school, studied music and clarinet, and she played with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra. Virginia married Peter at age 20, and they had 5 children. a series of events led to Virginia becoming a single mum at age 29, and she lived that way for the rest of her life. She single-handedly raised those children, renovated an affordable family cottage with skills she learned working as a builder's labourer. In 1967, the family moved to start a new life in Gippsland with a combi split-screen wagon. Sadly, that did not work out, and so the family packed up in their wagon and headed north with no particular place to go. After driving for a week, Virginia and her family ended up arriving in Brisbane, and Virginia was offered work on a chook farm in Capalaba. So they ended up moving there, and eventually she saved enough for a deposit on a block of land in Cleveland, where she and her eldest son, Tim, designed and constructed a simple 6 very small bedroom dwelling, but it worked for them all. She lived in the Redlands for many, many years, but in 1972 she went back to university to study social work. In 78 she went to Europe to live, work and travel. She lived in a kibbutz in Israel, sewing and repairing clothes, and was welcomed back fondly by that community several times across the decades. She travelled extensively over Europe, UK, Morocco, Turkey, Tibet and Nepal. She walked to Everest Base Camp. She was an independent lady. She was a great walker, bushwalker, a lover of music, often accompanied by her daughter Narissa to concerts here in the Redlands and also in the city. She was a chess player who delighted when her grandchildren started beating her as a sign of her contribution to their growth and development. Many folks said it was always like catching up with a young friend spending time with Virginia. Her family spoke of the determination and resilience as vital life skills remain a hallmark to all of them as they know how to face life challenges and make choices to help them survive. She was a survivor. She taught her great-granddaughter Lily to play piano, and which she'll cherish forever. Virginia moved to Thornside many years ago and was always a keen gardener. Family members said you could find her in the garden every day until the day that she went to hospital. She was also an artist, very accomplished, and some of her works were on display at the memorial at Helen Cemetery. She participated in many exhibitions and volunteered as an active participant at Redland Art Gallery, managed by Redland City Council, where she began volunteering in 2003. She was actively involved with installation and demount of exhibition changeovers, was a front of house volunteer for 2 afternoons a month for over 2 decades. She'd assist with Sunday workshops. She never missed a floor, talk or opening event. However, once COVID required people to wear masks, she was hard of hearing and she couldn't lip read so well, so she stepped back from active involvement in the gallery. She was a keen bird counter and contributed to the bird counting Thornside every year, and as an active member of the Birkdale-Thornside community conversations over the last few years, she arranged for a shorebird excursion for the group, and the end of last year, just 2 months ago, she arranged for Arthur and Cheryl Keats to provide an educational shorebird presentation for us all. She was a much-loved member of the Redlands community, the Queensland Way to Study group, and was fondly remembered at her funeral by many Thornside locals, peers from BirdLife, officers and volunteers from Redland Art Gallery, and she'll be deeply missed by all, her devoted family, who all spoke passionately about her vibrant legacy in all of our lives. We'll miss her floral dresses zipping along the coastal neighbourhoods with her massive smile, her quick wit and her generous offerings of cuttings from her garden. Virginia lived until the age of 93. She was an incredible force and she passed away on the 30th of May 2024. She'll be fondly remembered by many locals in our area. Now, Virginia.
Thank you. Well said.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bishop, for that. Certainly a colourful life and obviously a great contributor to our community. And I move now into agenda item number 4, recognition of achievement. We have 2.
Well,
Sorry. Oh. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. Apologies.
No,
Flag it.
we didn't.
Okay.
Oh, no. If I run a voice, Councillor Mackenzie will take over. I wanted today, please, to acknowledge the passing of Gail Thomas. Gail has been a resident of Redlands for many years, and sadly, on the 26th of May, Gail passed away suddenly. Gail was a member of the local horse riding fraternity and is extremely missed and well remembered. Gail worked in her semi-retirement as the ride and event organiser for Red Rivers Trail Group, which is the local branch of AFRA, the Australian Trail Horse Riders Association. The trail group organised many rides across our trail groups, trail parks, and Gail was the organiser of local rides. She went out and did reconnaissance trips to make sure all the facilities were in working order and planned the rides for the group. She was very actively involved through trail care consultation with Redland City Council and provided advice from the Australian Trail Horse Riders Association and Red Rivers Trail Riding to Council's consultation committees for the development of tracks and trails across the city, and was particularly engaged through Officer Leo Newlands in his role in the planning of the Eastern Escarpment and Bayview Trail Parks, and was in the process of contributing to the development of the trail network that is proposed to go through the Heinemann Road site. Whenever a new gate, step over, picnic area, trough or tap was installed across the trail parks, Gail would test it and provide feedback to the officers as to the practicality of the design and offer suggestions on how to improve infrastructure or better design for next time. This was always appreciated and done in the best spirit of community collaboration with Council. Gail, I first met when I was a child. Gail was married to Stuart in 1967 and she sold her beloved F.J. Holden in order to afford a deposit on land in Giles Road at Redland Bay. At the time, the block that they lived on their entire lives together was the last block in a dead-end street. And anyone who knows Redland Bay now knows Giles Road is definitely a through road. They had 2 children, Brett and Michelle, and Gail gave a lifetime of community work, working with horses and working the farm in Giles Road with strawberries, cattle, and of course, keeping horses. Gail's love of horses never waned. Gail volunteered and was an active parent member of Redland Horse and Pony Club while taking her own children over a number of years, and was again back at Redland's Horse and Pony Club as soon as her grandchildren were ready to learn to ride. As an active grandparent member, Gail again taught many children to ride. Gail was always available for help and advice to all of the families and the riders in Redland. Were Gail a man, one might have said at her passing, there was a true gentleman. Gail was a lady in the true sense of the word. She cared for the welfare of others. She cared deeply for her horses and the horses in her care as the farm at Giles Road eventually became an agistment centre known as Bremel Park, Bremel being her 2 children, Brett and Michelle. In later years, she was dedicated in her efforts to improve our local trail care and equestrian facilities through her representation at AFRA and Red Rivers. Gail taught her family, if you have animals, then your animals will always have to come first. The children recount that they knew not to whinge or complain when they had jobs to do, just get on with the task at hand and value your friends and your family. Gail's love of her horses and skills have passed to her daughter Michelle, who went on to keep and train horses also. And Gail was involved for over 50 years in local horse riding groups and activities, including the Pony Club, and had passed her skills and knowledge as a horsewoman on. They were widely acknowledged and respected, as she taught many horsemanship, kindness and compassion. Gail's tireless efforts were acknowledged through her having been awarded a life membership of Red Rivers Trail Club. The club is now seeking to organise a memorial ride in honour of Gail, and later in this meeting today, we will hear a motion to ask the officers to see what could appropriately be named in her honour and honouring the work that she did in helping to develop our trail paths. And I hope that we can acknowledge that later on in the meeting. Gail will be very sadly missed, and she was a key community member who always stepped forward to help anyone in need, and it's a very sad passing, so thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Very wonderful to hear of the contributions to amazing community members, and I thank you both for the words that you shared with us. Moving on to agenda item number 4, which is recognition of achievement. And I have two recognitions to speak to today, and I've been provided with some words, so I'll read those out for everyone. And the first one I was very excited to read about, and that was the achievement of one of our local artists, Archie Moore. And today I'd like to recognise Archie Moore, a Kamilaroi and Bigambul artist who was born in Toowoomba and now lives on Lamb Island. Archie's exhibition, Kith and Kim, was recently awarded the very prestigious Golden Lion for Best National Participation at the 6th Venice Biennial, and that is a very big achievement for those in the art world. He is the first Australian to win this award, and that is given to the best national pavilion at the event. Kith and Kin features an enormous hand-drawn family tree spanning 65,000 years, rendering white chalk on black chalkboard painted walls. It draws on his Kamilaroi and Bigambul British Scottish heritage. A large plinth in the centre of the space features a display of papers of various heights, enclosed by a shallow pool of water. The papers include redacted material from colonial inquests into the 557 Aboriginal people who have died in police and prison custody since 1991. Archie's conceptual practice works across a range of media, including paintings, drawings, sculpture, installation, photographs and video. He often combines historical examinations with personal reflections to address the lived experience of Indigenous Australians. Language, memory, politics, religion and the concept of dwelling are recurring themes of his work. After completing a Bachelor of Visual Arts at Queensland University of Technology in 1998, Archie was awarded the Biennial Anne and Gordon Samstag International Visual Arts Scholarship, allowing him to study at the Academy of Fine Arts in Prague. Archie is exhibited regularly, nationally and internationally, in solo and major group exhibitions. He was honoured with a solo exhibition at Griffith University Art Museum in 2018. His artworks are held in major public collections across Australia, including the National Gallery of Australia and National Portrait Gallery in Canberra, Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art, Art Bank, Newcastle Art Gallery, Griffith University Art Museum and the University of Queensland Art Museum in Brisbane. Kith and Kin is on display at the Venice Biennial until the 24th of November. Anyone can make the trip. However, in good news for those of us who aren't able to travel to Venice, Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art, has indicated it plans to present Kith and Kin sometime in the future.
Wow, fabulous.
Yeah, very exciting. And the second recognition of achievement is for officers who attended the Local Government Association Awards for Excellence. So on the 23rd of May this year, council officers attended the Local Government Management Association Awards for Excellence. The LGMA Awards for Excellence recognise the best of local government initiatives in the state, noting the differing environments and communities that local government serves. Although no awards were won by council directly, there are a number of deserving teams who should be recognised for their work this year. 2 of Redland City Council's teams were included in the awards with the following acknowledgements. Council was a finalist for our Embracing the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Initiative in the award category for collaboration. The Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Initiative encourages greater inclusivity, acceptance and understanding of people living with disabilities such as dementia, vision and hearing impairment and chronic illnesses. Through the wearing of white sunflower lanyards and pins, council employees are able to show those with non-visible disability that they are there to provide support if needed, as well as allowing individuals the opportunity to choose to wear a green sunflower lanyard, wristband or badge if they want to voluntarily disclose to others that they have a hidden disability and may require extra assistance. Redland City Council is the first council in Queensland to officially join the program, with the initiative rolled out at the Visitors Information Centre, Customer Service Centres, Redland Art Gallery, libraries and Redland Performing Arts Centre, with the goal of expanding the program into all areas of council. Council also had an entry for Sing 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 Dementia Choir in the community shaping category. Sing 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 is a groundbreaking choral program rediscovering the joy of music that is changing lives and enriching communities across the Redlands coast. Developed in collaboration with Sing Studios, Sing 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 harnesses the therapeutic power of music to support individuals living with dementia and their caregivers, fostering a sense of belonging, connection and joy. Through engaging workshops, educational initiatives and intergenerational interaction, Sing 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 is transforming the way council approaches dementia care and community engagement in a city that has an older demographic than most. In 2022, Redland City Council became the second council in Queensland to be acknowledged by Dementia Australia for its commitment to creating a dementia-friendly city, and Sing 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 further strengthens that goal. Redland City Council was also acknowledged, along with several other councils, as collaborators with Sunshine Coast Council, who took out the Collaboration Category Award for Land for Wildlife South East Queensland. The Land for Wildlife South East Queensland program involves 13 South East Queensland councils working together to support private landholders' land conservation efforts through the Land for Wildlife South East Queensland program. Working together, these groups have supported threatened species, restored degraded lands and assisted in providing habitat and movement corridors for our local wildlife. As the award category suggests, collaboration is the key to land conservation in South East Queensland, with more than 50% of biodiversity values existing on private land. The program is fully funded and led by participating councils, with its services fee of charge to private landholders. This year, the program encompasses more than 79,000 hectares of South East Queensland habitat, representing more than 5,600 participating properties. Lastly, 6 of our officers from across council proudly represented and took part in the 2024 LGMA Australasian Management Challenge. The Australasian Management Challenge, the AMC, is an innovative development opportunity that is a convergence of ideas, energy, academic rigour and practical application, the elements which develop great leadership and great local government employees. This year, the team, collaboratively known as the Redlands Coast Bay Watchers, was made up of Megan McLean and Vinnie, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the surname, so I might get it wrong. Is it Gurum? Anyone know? G-U-I-M? Gurum? From our City Assets team, Sonia Kaysar. From our Advocacy, Major Projects and Economic Development team, Jenna Seeger. Correct me if I'm getting the surnames incorrect. From City Operations, Coco Cashman from People, Culture and Organisational Performance, and Tara Hutchison from Customer and Community Services. And we thank them and all the teams noted for representing council so professionally and proudly.
Yeah, I reckon.
And now we move on to agenda item number 5, which is receipt and confirmation of minutes. So we now move on to, if I can have a mover and seconder that the minutes of the general meeting held on the 15th of May 2024 be confirmed. Councillor Bishop, Councillor Mitchell. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. Agenda item number 6, declaration of prescribed conflict of interest and declarable conflicts of interest. Councillors are reminded of their responsibilities in relation to a council's prescribed conflict of interest and declarable conflict of interest at a meeting. Details of these responsibilities are also outlined in the agenda. Please be reminded that all interests need to be declared at a statutory meeting of council. This means any prescribed or declarable conflict of interests relating to an item being discussed at a non-statutory meeting need to be declared at the general or special meeting preceding the non-statutory meeting or workshop. A potential list of items to be discussed at all non-statutory meetings are made available to councillors with each workshop agenda before the preceding general meeting, so that this can be achieved. These declarations can also be made at any time throughout the meeting. Does anyone need to raise any conflicts of interest? Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 7, matters of outstanding from the previous general meeting. The CEO will now give an update on the matters outstanding from the previous general meetings. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. There's 3 items that are outstanding. The first is the notice of motion from the Deputy Mayor on the report on Council's programs related to the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. There's a report being prepared that will come to a future meeting of Council. The draft Birkdale Community Precinct Local Government Infrastructure Designation Consultation Report. That report is also being prepared. That will come to a future meeting of Council. And there was a mayoral minute on the expense reimbursement and provision of facilities for councillors policy. That report's coming to a future meeting of Council as well.
Thank you, CEO. Agenda item number 8, there are no mayoral minutes for today's meeting. Agenda item number 9, this is public participation. So in accordance with section 6.10 of Council meeting standing orders, a period of 15 minutes may be made available by resolution to the members of the public to address the local government on matters of public interest relating to local government. We have 2 residents who would like to speak today, so we'll need a motion to suspend standing orders. Can I have a mover and seconder that the standing orders be suspended for 15 minutes public participation segment to allow members of the public to address council on matters of public interest related to local government? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Moved by Councillor Bishop, second by Councillor Boglari. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. I just have to run through some housekeeping initially. You may have noticed the signage in the chambers regarding public participation at meetings. It is Council's usual practice to require any person wishing to address the meeting to state their name and suburb or organisation that they represent and the subject they wish to speak about. This information is recorded in the minutes of the meeting, which is a public document available for inspection at Council's Administration Building and published on Council's website. I also advise the meeting is being live streamed, maybe not yet, not at the moment, and that by speaking you acknowledge and agree that this meeting can be seen live, not in this case at the moment, in public domains. Any person addressing the meeting will A. State their name and suburb or organisation they represent and the subject they wish to speak about. B. Stand unless unable to do so. C. Act and speak with decorum. D. Be respectful and courteous. E. Make no comments directed to any individual council employee, councillor or member of the public, ensuring that all comments relate to council as a whole. As chairperson, it is my responsibility to consider each application on its merits and consider any relevant matter in making my decision to allow or disallow a person to address the local government. Only those members of the public who have an approved application are able to do so. Details of how to apply are on Council's website. Determine the maximum number of speakers based on the number of persons wanting to speak and the time available. Each person has a maximum of 5 minutes, dependent on the number of speakers. I also can withdraw the approval to address Council before the time period has elapsed. Debate or discussion cannot be entered into at this time.
Excuse me.
Yes, Councillor.
There's no
Oh, sorry, there's no mic. Before we begin, I thought if someone came on the day, they could ask permission from the meeting to speak. Is that correct? Can I have confirmation of that?
No.
Well, normally they make an application to speak.
Yeah, but I thought if they were here on the day, they could ask for permission.
I'll just seek advice from government.
Because this has happened previously, I believe.
I think the mayor
The mayor
approves
has agreed to that previously when people haven't put their application in.
So there's two people want to speak on the same matter.
We did do it.
But you can allow another person to speak.
Okay,
Do
so
we know who it
Ashley's
is?
not in attendance.
Okay.
It's in the standing orders.
All right. So we have two speakers, I understand, present.
Have to change the standing
So
orders.
I'll proceed firstly with the person that put the application in first.
Yeah.
So can I please have Alison Sutherland move forward to the lectern to address council? And please state your name and suburb or organisation that you represent and the subject you wish to speak about. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to come here. And it's interesting to see your location and people present. I'm here today because I found out that we are not the bush track, which was appreciated by everybody, not only the Wellington Point residents, but others who come to Wellington Point for recreation. The bush track around the eastern side goes along from the northern end of Wellington Point. She knows the long peninsula. It goes along and people would do a full circuit. They go along Main Road, they go around the point, enjoy the scenery from there, then come along the eastern track and then come back out and then go home or back to their vehicles or whatever. It made a total enjoyable experience. Now I have to go to notes so I don't overlook things. A landslip occurred in early 2022 east of the Esplanade. We had patiently waited for 2 years for the landslip damage to be stabilised. Now, we go along and look over the fence, or there's all this reinforcement being done, or we can see down there, that's where the walkway, the little bit of walkway that's been damaged will be repaired. We'll be able to do our track again because we've barricaded off north and south. On the 17th of January, I had the opportunity to read a council-generated letter titled Update on Wellington Point Landslip Remediation. The letter was accompanied by an aerial photograph of the northern side of Wellington Point, of the northeastern side. The letter informed us the slope stabilisation work was completed November 23. That letter was generated January 24. That works was installed anchors drilled into the embankment and placement of stainless steel mesh across the slope. One sentence of the letter states, our focus now shifts towards the reinstatement of the popular walking track. It was acknowledged in that letter that the walking track is popular. In fact, it was very popular. The next sentence says, the walking track will be replaced. You'll notice it doesn't say reinstated, it says replaced. And new stairs will be added to enhance safety and sustainability. It also states the public will access the stairs by walking along the Esplanade. So the Esplanade is actually meaning the street that has residents living along, that's at the top, what above where we used to have a walking track. It's nowhere near the walking track. The aerial photo that accompanied the letter had 3/4 of the track labelled. This is a track everybody at walk. going back many years. It was called redundant, removal of redundant infrastructure. Imagine, that's what our track was called, redundant infrastructure.
Mrs Sutherland, I'll just let you know you've got a minute left of your time.
Okay, sorry.
You're right.
I knew, like me, everyone who used the track would be devastated. No one wants a circuit that needs to use stairs and then walk along years below. The general public who love the track weren't aware that this was all going to happen. I had to think, how do I let them know? How can I prevent that occurring? It was a worry there would be immediate starving tearing up the track. That risk caused me to make a hurried decision to do a petition. At that time, there was no access to petition on the internet, and in less than 2 weeks, 900 people requested council to stop destroying their bush track circuit. It was a time when it was so surprising that people would put their name and address to a document, when there was such a fear of schemes, but they were so emotional about having their track back. The definite wish is for council to reinstate the popular walking trail. Now remember, I'm talking 900 people in less than a week wanting that track back.
Thank you, Mrs Sutherland. And I'd now like to ask our second speaker to move forward, Mr Peter Sutherland. And I'll just repeat, please state your name and suburb or organisation you represent and the subject you wish to speak about.
Right. My name's Peter Sutherland. I'm from Wellington Point. Been a resident there for around about 40 years. And I'm here to support my wife with the reinstatement of the walking track that was so popular. And I'm going to start by requesting that the council direct the council officers to abandon the proposed construction of the stairways that they are putting forward. I base this request on a number of issues. Firstly, the people of Redlands have an expectation that that walking track will be reinstated. And in fact, on the construction drawings for the stabilisation drawing, it clearly shows the walking track being reinstated, both on the plan view and the cross section. It also says that this walking track will be constructed and designed by others, but it clearly meant that it was to be allowed for on those construction drawings. And I guess we're all puzzled why it didn't happen. So, if the construction is made, the bush track would most likely never be constructed, and this is why I'm asking the council to stop this nonsense with this proposed set of stairways outside the slip area, because once that connection is made, there will be no real incentive for council to reinstate the bush track. The council officers have mentioned that they feel that there's a possible liability to be incurred by council by reinstating this track. I would suggest that there are many areas where the council could be subject to litigation around Wellington Point, and this would be have no additional liability, and in fact would probably have less liability than the stair proposal. At our first meeting where council officers talked to us after we put the petition in, they offered 3 options. They said they considered all options. 3 options. First one was to put an elevated structure that was purely pie in the sky stuff to sort of let us think we've done something. The second option was the stair option, and the third option was to do nothing. Of those options, the do nothing would probably be the better option. However, what became clear during the discussion was the other options have not been considered. And in fact, the council still, to this day, do not have sufficient information to look at those options in detail. So here we have, we believe the council is going to be asked to proceed with that set of stairways, and the options will simply be, other options will be simply ignored. And if so, well, we've spent our money putting the stairs in, you know, why would we do anything else? The bush track that we're asking for is not a significant structure. It's quite a flexible structure. That means something that can accommodate movements and settlements. A gravel track, approximately 1.2 metre wide, is not very difficult to construct there. At the most, there might be a couple of small retaining structures less than a metre high during the 80 metres, and certainly on the downhill side there would be an edge board similar to what's in part of the existing walking track, and a handrail.
Just letting you know you have 1 minute left.
Okay, well, I'm just about winding up. So I just asked the council to direct the officers to look at these alternatives and to consider them in detail. And I might also state that as a professional engineer with more than 50 years experience, I have offered to participate and help them in coming to a good conclusion. However, at this point, it's been soundly rejected. Anyway, I thank you for your time today, and I sincerely hope that you'll reconsider the wishes of just about everybody in the Redland. The only people that seem to want this set of stairs are our council officers, and I find that rather puzzling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Sutherland. Thank you both for coming in and speaking to the topic. All right, we are now moving back to this meeting. Standing orders resuming. Can I please have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Bishop, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Put the vote. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item number 10, petitions and presentations. I understand we have 3 today to be presented. Councillor Rendles, I believe you have 2 petitions to present. The first is 10.1, which is a request for council to undertake a new Southern Moreton Bay Islands alternative transport route study.
The last time a study was commissioned into alternate transport routes for the Southern Moreton Bay Islands was over a decade ago, which was completed by GHD. Residents are crying out for help with the continued isolation they are experiencing, with the lack of services available on the islands, and the overall isolation compared to mainland residents. They are also crying out over the continuous lack of parking which is available, as well as the frustrations in dealing with the monopoly water transit company, which are not serving in the best interests of islanders. Residents are aware of the new PDA project. However, there is uncertainty with regards to how many of the 2,200 spots, car parking spots, will be allocated to them, as well as the costs associated with park there. Residents also believe that once the new PDA project is completed, it will hardly place a dent in the current situation where the population was estimated at 8,500 within the 2021 census, with the population now estimated at around 12,000 and continuing to grow. I believe now, as a new council is just formed, it is the perfect time to explore alternate transport routes with an independent study whilst the PDA is still in progress. I would move that this petition is of an operational nature and be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration.
Just need a second.
And somebody second. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. Councillor Rendell's second petition, which is a request from the Clay Island e-bike storage facility.
We, the residents of Macleay Island, propose that the Queensland Government and Redland City Council will construct a lock-up bicycle storage facility at the Macleay Island Ferry Terminal. Legal parking is maxed out by 6:30 a.m. However, there are people who would ride an e-bike to the ferry if they were confident they could secure their expensive bikes. Existing bike parking is totally inadequate for modern expensive bikes. Remember, every bike used is one extra car space. This petition I would move that this petition is of an operational nature and be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Endorse. Seconder, Councillor Bishop. Thank you. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. And the third petition we have is going to be presented by Councillor Mitchell. It's a request for infrastructure updates to Sunshine Drive in Cleveland.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a petition from residents requesting the Redlands should have bus lanes, trams, better bike lanes. In Sunshine Drive, should have footpaths and better street lights so people can go for walks at night and upgrade Sunshine Drive Road. Little clarification, which wasn't in the petition, but from council. The principal petitioner has been notified that some of these requests are matters for the state government, and details have been provided on how to contact the state member. It is proposed that this petition will address relevant issues around footpaths and better street lights on Sunshine Drive, Cleveland. So I propose the motion that is of an operational nature and be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Seconder, Councillor Boglari. Put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I've not been made aware of any presentations today, so we'll move to agenda number 11. And I believe we are seeking to alter the order of business. Councillor Boglari.
Keep pressing that microphone. Due to residents that are interested in item 16.1, I'd like to move that we move it forward to the beginning of the meeting, please.
Seconded by Councillor Bishop. Put the motion. Carried unanimously. Sorry, is that going to?
No, it's not.
No, sorry.
So you need to take a vote.
Take a vote. For, yeah.
Yep.
Other recipients here.
Those in favour?
Yes, they are.
Councillor Boglari, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Rendles, Councillor Talty, Deputy Mayor Talty, Councillor Colley, Councillor Bishop and myself, Mayor Mitchell. Those against? Councillor Golly, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, the motion is carried.
So, is that we're going to change over to
So that'll become the first report.
So, reports to council.
So that's now your next
That's now?
report.
Okay.
So you're going to bring 16.1.
So we're bringing forward report to council, which is a late report. It was an update on the Wellington Point Esplanade walking track reinstatement, item number 16.1. Do I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation?
just one moment there, please. We're just changing the report. We've got a different report.
I'll just take a second so everyone's got that. Let me know when you're ready. Okay, it's now up on the screen. So do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Talty.
Is there an alternate motion?
No.
So does Councillor Mackenzie want to
Yeah,
talk
so
to?
Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sorry, no mics. Just, I guess, speak to it for clarification. This report came to us as a notice of motion from Councillor Boglari to provide us with information, background information on what had happened. we were never asked to make a decision. So we were just noting the work that the council officers had already done on this matter. So that's what we're being asked to do, is just to note the contents of the report, not actually make any decisions on options.
Question, Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Is there any officers present who can just explain the stair issue?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Brad
Brad?
at the back, explain it.
Still pressing the mic.
Yes, I believe.
Brad Salton.
Brad Salton can actually answer any questions. Thank you very much, Brad.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mike. Thanks, Mayor. Through you as Chair. Just a quick little summary. As you're aware, we did have a significant unfortunate rain event on the eastern side, which caused a landslip on the eastern side of the Esplanade at Wellington Point. A large section of that embankment, and all this is detailed in the report, but a large section of that embankment slipped and unfortunately covered the existing walking track that connected the northern end, connected at the northern end of the Esplanade to the Wellington Point Reserve. Council's initial focus was on stabilising the embankment to protect the critical infrastructure above it, such as the road and the services within the road, and also accesses to the properties that sit above this quite high embankment. The stabilisation methods used are made up of long grouted soil anchors penetrating deep into the embankment at 2 metre centre grids across that entire slip zone. They work in conjunction with, the anchors work in conjunction with geofabric, steel mesh and also wires across the surface to assist in that soil stabilisation. It's a complete stabilisation system, all elements working in conjunction with one another. As detailed in the report and the attachments, council officers and engineers considered options to connect the existing walking track back to the reserve. I won't go through those options, but the one option that we're recommending proceeding with is construction of a set of stairs. That set of stairs links the popular walking track that we've heard about coming along Main Road down through the Wellington Point Reserve and back up along the Esplanade. Unfortunately, we had that landslip. So the profile and the landscaping of the area has actually changed, and that is an unfortunate event that none of us could see or predict, but it is an event that occurred. It did take away that walking track. The stabilisation works have been designed, constructed and certified to protect that embankment. Also acknowledging the social benefits of the walking track that did exist there, which was a key request in the recent petition. A portion of the existing walking track has been reopened up, thus creating a small loop track within that zone. This is for the community to experience that natural environment, which we know is very important from a social wellbeing perspective. That section of the track that has been opened up is actually on the southern end of the Esplanade, and it is outside of the recent stabilisation area or the landslip area. The proposed stairs at the northern end will close that loop and create that loop back to the Wellington Point Reserve. So people can enjoy the loop track, they can then walk along the Esplanade, which is a very minor trafficked road, and provide that connection back through to the Wellington Point Reserve.
Thank you very much, Brad, who I now know is the Group Manager of City Assets. Councillor Bishop, you had a
Yeah, just another
Sorry,
question.
have we opened up into?
Sorry.
Sorry,
Well,
just give me a moment.
You've got a mover and a second.
Yeah.
So the mover's spoken to it, and an officer present, so it's up to you as whether or not you want to go for or against or open questions.
Yeah, I'll, anyone speaking against the motion? Councillor Rendell? Oh, sorry, you just moved, you didn't speak for it.
Well, couldn't really speak to
Yeah,
it
to
because
a comment.
there was.
Well, maybe I'll just open up to questions and comment. Councillor Rendell, did you have?
I guess my question is, it's a little bit for a point of clarification in respect to what the motion is. But the for the benefits of people who haven't seen this report, the report broadly encapsulates the options that you outlined in your discussion. But there's two options provided. Option one is to note the contents of the report relating to the Esplanade walking track, which is the options being put. Option two resolves to request further information relating to the Wellington Point Esplanade walking track. That, so I'm speaking against option one, by definition, probably in support of option two. That from the speakers who attended today from the community, and thank you for coming. From the speakers who attended today, you know, there appears to be a clear and high level of concern from the community as to the availability of this asset. But there also, more importantly, appears to be a little bit of difference of opinion that's been expressed in regards to the options themselves. And within that context, I would speak against option one and ask that we be given more information in respect to the alternative options and perhaps the opportunity to consider it in more detail given the short notice that was provided.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Did you wish to make a comment or question, Councillor Lagarde?
Oh, gosh, we're so used to pressing that microphone. There's a lot of background story here, and there was lots of conversations last year and this year which have led to this point of time, which I never actually thought we were going to get to with this option. The land slip, it's been stated, happened in 2022, and honestly, monthly if not weekly, officers have been discussing this, and it has been discussed in here. The community and myself, as I said, did not predict this as the outcome because the reinstatement of the walkway was always thought was going to happen. Stabilisation of the wall for safety, of course, you know, was a priority as it is very close to a road, infrastructure and housing, and because of that we actually got funding for the project. Up until a year ago, I've got emails here from 16th of June last year where it talks about the reinstatement of the pathway will happen almost seamlessly, you know, after the stabilisation. All I can understand is at that point in time when the stabilisation happened, officers and contractors, I believe, thought afterwards that the pathway cannot go across it, even though, as was said previously, on those profiles there was actually indication where the pathway was supposed to go. So it came as a surprise when all of a sudden the pathway wasn't going to be reinstated and alternate was going to be found, and that is when the community was extremely concerned. And we talk about the benefits of walkways, and it's the obvious for our physical health. It's also a bit of a mental health in that area because it's a beautiful foreshore pathway. And there's also economic benefits because the people who have been contacting me have come from as far as Carindale and everything, that they actually come down to this area, and I can only presume probably buy coffee or, you know, lunch or something at one of the local restaurants. So there are a lot of benefits from this pathway, plus the passion in the community for such a beautiful area, which I believe is what is driving wanting this pathway reinstated as we had hoped and had thought was happening. There's a couple of options which are being considered, one being below the landslip, but between the mesh and the foreshore area, it is Ramsar wetland. The officers have double checked the GPS coordinates, and this area is all Ramsar. And we all know with the EPBC Act how many of our projects have been held up due to that. the residents are actually walking through this area now, basically. There's a bush track has been formed, so it is quite able to be traversed. It's fine. But it is in Ramsar wetland, so council cannot put a pathway there without going through the EPBC Act, which, if after all the permits, I'm presuming that would be literally years. The stairs to the north, however, which is the officer's option, doesn't give that same mental benefit, or probably the social benefit, because people aren't going to come to enjoy that like they did the other walkway. But there's also social impacts. It really adversely affects the livability of a couple of the houses where the pathway comes up.
Just letting you.
It's very close to their house. There's some antisocial behaviour in this area already, and the residents are concerned where the new stairs are coming up, because it was bushland conservation. It's always been protected. We've always tried to stop people walking up there because of the other. And I know there's a change in it, but I've been talking to a couple of external, 3 or 4 actually over the time, engineers, and there definitely is a point of disagreement on what can happen on the mesh and what can't happen on the mesh. So council officers are concerned about actually cutting the mesh to put poles in, if we have to put handrails in for a path. But there's conflicting views as to whether that actually does weaken the strength of the mesh or not. And a liability or risk without, ask the Mayor's indulgence to let me to continue speaking for a bit longer, please. Thank you. There's a liability and risk that the council, of course, has to consider. But when I look, and I have walked like the Eastern Escarpment tracks, there are severe falls there and a huge liability risk there, which we mitigate by having signage. So, you know, I today am also concerned if this goes ahead as is and the stairs go in, there will be no more investigation for the path. And some residents have actually asked me, put the steps in, but keep going to get the pathway because that's what they prefer. I'd like to actually ask the officers, what would be the issue to lay this on the table? Because, you know, I do intend to continue advocating for the bush path, and I reserve the right to, in future general meetings, bring a motion for it. But I would like to ask the officers what would be the impact, and could this lie on the table for further investigations at this point, which would be my...
I'll just thank you, Councillor Boglari. I'll get a response from the CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. I think if this report was, it is only a report to note, so it's not a report to do anything different. So it was laid on the table. It wouldn't change the direction of what works are actually about to happen. So laying it on the table doesn't provide any direction or alternate instruction for officers to that which is already happening.
Okay, so could I have an alternate motion to have this? Yeah. Yeah, but that says to request further information. You need to change that to say and pause the works. Is that possible for me to put through option 2 amended and say pause the works at this stage? Because I agree with the concern, once the steps into the north go in, some of the importance of having this work done is reduced.
Of the 6 response from the CEO.
So councillors, you've got a live motion, so you're debating the motion, which can have an amendment made to it, and the amendment would need to be voted on for that to become the live motion. So the live motion is, at the moment, is that the Wellington Point Esplanade walking track report is noted. Councillor Boglari, if you're putting up an amended motion, you'd need to get a mover and a seconder
Yep.
to vote on the amended motion.
Okay, thank you. I will amend the motion then.
The officers
I- to the officer's recommendation, which I had discussed yesterday, but on advice withdrew. The council resolves to note the contents of this report relating to the Wellington Point Esplanade walking track and pause any future works for further investigation with a report to be brought back to council. Is that, could I ask for CEO's eye over my words, please?
I don't know specifically what contractual commitments we've already.
That's what I was asking before I did this. That's what I said before, I meant before when I asked for impacts at this stage.
So I might ask through you, Mayor, to
Yeah. Get someone.
Brett or Nicole.
We do have a contract, a small contract, because as you know from the report, that the option for the North Stairs was a much smaller cost as well, value for money type arrangement. So we would have to look at what that meant to stand them down and cancel that contract. It's more, I'm not sure what other information that we could bring to the table to actually change the outcome, honestly.
So now needs to be voted. So now got.
Please, Matt. Just give me a second.
Now you've got an amended motion, which so what we're doing is we're going through this part here. So we're debating the motion. There's an amendment that's been raised.
Well,
We need to
they
vote on
said
the
to change the motion.
If we can just take a
Just take a
second while I
second.
get some advice,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's a little bit different to just sort of.
It doesn't stop the work.
Yeah.
I was going to go option 2 and they said to do an alternate motion. They said to amend that motion.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Tony. I think this is too far beyond, it's not an amended motion now, it's an
Yeah.
alternate motion. So you now need to let the original motion either be carried or lost, in which case you've foreshadowed an alternate motion.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
aiming at doing before, but then on advice I went to amend that motion, but I was
Well-
going to say I flag
To be,
but it's,
the advice was
Yeah.
based on the fact that there's been significant work done and officer investigations into it.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what else is, to Nicole's point, you're going to get in a future report. So you need to let the motion that you've got at the moment, which was
play out.
Okay,
moved by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded by Councillor Talty.
Yeah.
all right. All right, so moving back to the original motion, now that we have mover and a seconder, I put the motion.
I think there was further
Oh,
questions.
further questions. Sorry, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
With the speakers for and against, or?
Yeah, usually speakers.
Suspended standing orders so we can have comment.
Okay, I just, two things. So we're back on the original motion now.
Which is what?
Which is for noting, it's just for noting. I wanted to ask a question if I could, Mayor. This work is required as a result of a natural disaster, and it is a repair to long-standing infrastructure, not new infrastructure. And I was under the impression under all of the acts that meant that we were repairing something and therefore we were not subject to those new regulations for referral to EPBC, etc. So I'm at a loss as to why the officers have said it will be subject to Ramsar and EPBC when we are repairing infrastructure following on from damage to current and long-standing infrastructure. So could we get an answer to that, please? I'm happy to support leaving it laid on the table to proceed, and I'm happy to go over with Councillor Bulgari and an engineer and have a further look at it. But I'd like to understand that, because my thought is if we've got something there that can be repaired, and I know we've stabilised the bank, then that should simply be able to be done.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe the CEO can make a
Yeah,
reply.
thank you, Mayor. I think I can answer that. So Brad or Nicole, let me know if I've got it wrong. I think the original path didn't actually cross the Ramsar boundary.
No, it sort of hugged it, and it might have because it was previous, but the walkway got demolished. It's not a repair of the walkway. It got demolished by the landslide. And yes, there may have been a plan previously, but once they did the restabilisation work and they saw the form of the landslide, and what the mesh does is it's still settling as well. It's holding everything together. And to reinstate where it was would require us to puncture the mesh. And it is in the report, which opens us up to re-engineering or recertification. And the RPQ engineers, who very rarely use their number, have used their RPQ qualifications to state that they do not recommend or support that approach, as it potentially, means that, and it won't be today when it's sunny, it'll be in 5 years' time after we've had a heap more rain, that the new walkway may or may not exist, and it's just not the recommended option because of the liability issues as well, to the stabilisation of the bank here. So the Ramsar wetland was if we were going to replace it with another one. So it was one of the options to actually not replace it because it no longer exists. It was to put it down below the mesh so that you weren't actually puncturing the mesh, because that's what we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect the warranties and the stabilisation of the mesh. One way to go was to, again, it was going to be a new structure, and you can't do that because it's in the Ramsar wetland. So we couldn't go over, we couldn't go under, and this was the only option available for the to connect the Wellington Point walkway. It still creates an attachment from the Wellington Port walkway. All you do is you get a different perspective. The outcome's the same, but a different approach. It comes up and you get a look out across the Bay Islands instead of being down in the Ramsar wetland. There is a loop that has been reopened, so you can still experience the Ramsar wetlands and the mangroves. But yes, it is a brand new walkway because we couldn't, the other one got wiped out, basically, buried under the rock slide.
All right, can we move, if everyone's had their questions answered, we can move back to
No.
speaking on
Question.
guests? No, still questions? Councillor Hughes?
Also ready to push the button. Thank you. Maybe through yourself to the CEO or our team. Understanding, Dr. Davis, we've got the 4 options, and understanding the option 3 that's highlighted. When you said just previously that we really didn't have any other options, you've listed these here for us. But then when we go to the officer's report, and basically it's just for noting.
Yes.
So I'm asking the question is, if we are just noting this report, why is it here? Why is it at a general meeting?
I'll get into
Does
that.
Councillor Bulgari want a motion?
The CEO can provide information.
I'm just not
It was a request to make it public what the options that were investigated and to put it on the public record. Purely that.
Okay, so we are only voting to note the report, yes or no,
Yes.
really, and the officers will do what the officers will do in general. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
So you've got a contract, you're ready to go with the stairs.
Yep, it can be done in the next week or so, before the end of financial year.
And we're having this discussion so that the public are very aware of the work that you've done, the options that we've looked at, the costs. Okay, I don't have any more questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Bishop?
Yes, thank you, and also acknowledging the extraordinary amount of work that officers have done and the advocacy that Councillor Baglari has had in relation to this. And hearing from the residents, it is a much loved walking path. The reinstatement of a loop seems to be what is proposed in this option, and that is something that is required by the community to have a connection through there, and I understand the expediency of being able to do that. My question relates to, is it possible that an alternate route, looking at that pathway, may be pursued at a future time, either using this option or going with the alternative option, which is to request further information? Could we proceed with the stairs and then allow the amenity, looking at the geotech, looking at the challenge of all of that, EPBC, that will take time. The concern that I have, if the community want this connection, if we delay this, they won't get a connection for quite some time. Because prosecuting the alternative options of 1 and 2, which are preferable in terms of amenity, will take a long time to be able to be delivered. My question is, can we proceed with noting the report, allowing those works to happen, and then prosecuting that option for a future walkway? Would that be possible under this current option?
I don't guess anything's possible.
If it's
It's
not
not
impossible,
impossible.
then
It would be one of those things that any future capital works would come back through the capital prioritisation process and be subject to that.
because I think
But it doesn't preclude it.
if option 2 advances that and gives councillors more opportunity to consider that possibility, I would encourage that. But I think that we should try to look at what's possible there in future.
Option 1 allows that to happen because that's just noting. So you just note the report and we put the stairs through.
Yep.
It doesn't stop us looking at alternate options sometime in the future. I'm just not sure what those alternate options would be. That
Well, I think
would
it's
get through EPBC or allow the stabilisation.
To look at-
It doesn't preclude that.
I suppose it would be to look at what Councillor Baglari has been requesting on behalf of the community, which is to reinstate something that allows that connection through that area
Thank you.
at some point in future.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
Councillor Colley.
I'd like to applaud the officers in the report where it states in the risk management that the risk attitude statements affirm that council is uncompromising when it comes to the safety and welfare of its employees and community. I think that's extremely important to note here. The 4 options which this report mentions, option 4 is to do nothing, which sounds like nobody wants an option where there is no walking path there. So my question to officers is, options 1 and option 2, do they pose a risk to community safety which officers are not willing to take?
Get Brad.
Yeah.
We'll ask Group Manager of City Assets to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor. The area is, the material that has come down from the embankment is now laying in the area where the walking track was. That is uncompacted, unconsolidated material. Any construction work, and that could be to the depth, up to a depth of approximately 1.5 metres below the mesh surfacing that is now in place and below the anchors that are now in place. Any additional works in and around and on top of that will create either loading on top of that, which will continue to compact over time. We will expect this material to slightly move over time. The stabilisation methods that have been engaged there is rock anchors with tightening nuts, for a better word, on the end of them. The mesh is a movable sort of material that will move over time and will need some attention over time to make sure that it is still stable. This uncompacted material underneath will move and will compact. So if we start putting loading on top of that, whether it be a small gravel track with that loading, will increase and encourage more movement. If we start penetrating through, and we talk about penetrating through the mesh, but there's also penetrating through that uncompacted material, for any little retaining walls, any sets of stairs, handrails and the likes. If we don't go through that uncompacted material down into something that is slightly solid, we will get constant movement with time. That movement does create concern from a liability perspective. It will continue to move, and if people are walking across this new public infrastructure, we as council engineers and council officers need to ensure that we protect the broader public, so we're not creating trip hazards, not creating slight depressions, things like that. So we will have to constantly be trying to maintain this. What it also does as well is if we start doing works in and around this stabilisation area, this whole area has been designed and certified as a complete stabilisation system. If we start impacting, altering, amending that, we would be looking at recertifying the entire embankment to make sure that whatever works we're doing wouldn't impact the stabilisation of the entire embankment. And it is quite a high embankment. If those councillors that have ever been down there and you do look up, it is quite a sheer embankment that has now been protected. It is a drop off from the road and it is quite high. So yes, there is risk and there is liability issues that we're concerned with.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mitchell, you had a question?
Yes, I've got one short question, Madam Mayor, and I believe we're in questions, but there's been a lot of comments. I also have a lot of comments if you'll indulge me. My question is, there is a loop track that's been put through the Ramsar area. What's the length of that track at the moment, or the loop, approximately? Just trying to judge the experience that is on offer.
300 or 400 metres. It goes down from the Esplanade already. There's a place that you can sit and contemplate the wetlands. It literally goes right there. Would we get that built this now? Probably not. So you can actually go in and sit amongst the mangroves. I've been there. It's not unpleasant at all.
Thank you. And I was trying to stick with standing orders, but there were a bunch of comments. I'm happy to add some comments now if it's indulged.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say to the community, I'm the biggest champion of tracks and trails in the city, is my belief, and I acknowledge all the benefits, psychological, health and otherwise, that go on with this. I'm also a great fan of not misleading the community when the end result is probably going to be exactly the same. I'm hearing with the options 1 and 2 that there will be the need to refer to PPC, and it is highly unlikely, and we know that anything will get approved. Even if it does, costs will blow out to be unacceptable, and our insurance and things will be invalidated on the work being done. So I would love to be able to hand on heart believe that what you want with all the emotion that comes with it is possible. I do not believe it is. So I'll be supporting the original motion of officers. Thank you.
Councillor Gold.
Thank you, Chair, through to the officers. The original walking track, was that council designed, made and approved, or was it a walking track established by residents just cutting the track, and then council has been left to maintain the original track? And so now that we've had the landslip, the original track is gone, and so now we've got residents cutting their own track again. Can we get some clarification on that? Because if I refer to my own area, Division 3, we've got homes being built on the edge of these sheer areas, approved through our planning department, where seriously the residents are asking for the trees to be cut down so they can have a view, but on the same token, it's actually going to cause future landslips. And then below that, we've got walking tracks either cut by residents or councils put a boardwalk to facilitate some type of manoeuvring through a wetland. We need to have a look at this seriously and put a stop to residents cutting their own
So-
tracks?
All I can say is that the original walkway was council owned, sorry, through the chair, sorry, Madam, sorry, Mayor. It was an original council designed and built. If residents anywhere across our city are cutting tracks, cutting trees, or, you know, we've had kids with bikes even, they are subject to compliance action at some point in time.
So how did the new track get facilitated then?
The new track?
Into the Ramsdale side? Who cut that? Did council cut that?
It wasn't.
It wasn't,
No, that's been answered before.
So there is a loop that is an existing track.
Yeah.
So there was a loop, and then there was, from the loop, you could get down to the Wellington Point. The loop still exists, and yes, it is likely it's in the Ramsar wetland, and we would not be able to build it now, because it's a number of years old, decades old. Maybe 50 years old, so it's existing. The bit that was wiped out is the bit that goes from the end of that existing loop straight down to the point. That's the bit that we're talking about across the mesh, or, you know, so that's the bit that got wiped out.
Chair, I just hold concerns in general that I can look across Division 3 and probably even down to Redland Bay, where homes are being allowed to be built right on the edge of these sheer cliff faces.
Councillor.
And residents have that expectation of access to the bottom of those areas.
Thanks, Councillor Guy. I
From
guess
a landslip, I think it's dangerous.
yeah. If we come back to the original motion, do we have any? Now that we've had a lot of comment and questions, so the original motion, going back to the option 1 in the original motion, is, I believe, to note the officer's note the report, the officer's report. Do we have any speakers for and against the original motion, so that we can progress that now? No, all right. All right, Councillor Mackenzie, did you want to sum up from your original comment?
Just briefly, and I'll echo what Councillor Mitchell said. I am a champion of our tracks and trails. I'm at the park run every other week, not so much in winter. So I do value the importance of what these loops do, and I've actually walked that loop a number of times myself. So I appreciate the sentiments of the community, but with the option, I think, firstly, the report was that we were just noting the report. This report was not coming to us to suggest options or pick an option. So maybe there was a miscommunication in expectation on what this report was doing. So obviously I will stick with what the officer's recommendation is based on the feedback that we've got for option 1, which is virtually impossible because of EPBC, and I imagine cultural heritage as well. And I imagine option 2 will have the exact same matters as well. So option 3, I think the council officers have made the right decision in getting that loop and that getting that back sooner rather than later, and with more confidence that we can have that. So thank you.
All right. I'd just like to thank Councillor McGlary for your advocacy, and thank the community members for coming in today to speak to this event. I know, to speak to this report and this issue. I know it is very emotive, and I know officer time has been officer time has been invested into the issue. I'll now put the motion. Do we have movements?
Yeah, you're doing the those in favour.
Yeah. So those in favour of the motion. So it's Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golly, Councillor Rendles, Councillor Mackenzie, Deputy Mayor Tolte, Councillor Colley, Councillor Bishop. Those against, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Hughes, and myself. Motion is carried. Now we will return to the order, which was 13.1.
Okay, we just need to stop on our diligence.
Yes.
We just should note that Councillor Hewlett's absent. Before we take a vote, I've been recording that, but.
All right, so item 13.1, which is the May 2024 monthly financial report. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, did I say Mitchell or Mackenzie? Mitchell. Mitchell. Oh, good.
You can never get enough Mitchells.
Mitchell.
Yeah, just for the community to note we're getting towards the pointy end of this financial year, and it's great to see in the executive summary we're green across the board on the KPIs, on the key performance indicators. So that's wonderful. We're not to the end of the year yet, but great to think that we're setting ourselves up for another good year into next year. Just worth noting that we're on track for record capital works being delivered, so that's terrific. Also noting the expenditure in the COSEC class action, some $3.79 million. So another very healthy report, and just do encourage the community to stay aware of this each month. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against? Thank you. All right, I put the motion.
Question.
Oh, sorry, questions? Yes, Councillor, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to ask, mentioning the COSEC data, if it's permissible at this time for a little more information. I understand that the financial going back to the actual residents is now
Not at this stage, I
It's
think
not
that's
fine.
reflected, and I don't know if that's so knowledge yet.
I'll ask Andrew Ross, Legal Counsel, to make a comment.
So the current update is council has paid the claim to the class action solicitors. The repayment scheme hasn't been approved by the court, or the payment back to the international funder. We anticipate that there'll be a Supreme Court listing July onwards.
So can't note that very small number that the residents will actually see.
Some of the class members will receive very small amount of money. That's been noted during the court proceedings. We don't know the amount yet, that has to be approved.
That's all I was asking. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to our acting CFO, thank you. And Natalie, on our executive summary, which is page 27, thank you. Noting there in under the key financial highlights that the higher than budgeted fees, levies and utilities and charges. So I went looking at the graph, and you scroll over to page 30. Thank you. There, that's it. The statement of comprehensive income continued there. When you have a look at May and you circle that materials and services, that's actually a really high increase, and I'm wondering why. When you look over the year.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Hughes. You are correct in observing that we've had higher than budgeted fees, levies and utility charges. Perhaps the best way to explain this is on the statement of comprehensive income, which is on page 4 of 14 of the monthly financial report. We might just scroll up there, Natalie, please. So there are, if we just scroll up further, please. There are 4 line items under the recurrent revenue. We talk to levies and utility charges, which has experienced higher than budgeted revenue. And there are 2 elements that are contributing to that, Councillor Hughes. Higher than anticipated sewage utility charges and higher than anticipated refuse collection charges. Budgets for utility charges are underpinned by forecast volumes, so that is volumes of connections and volumes of collections. what we have observed is higher than forecast wastewater connections to the end of May, and also higher than forecast bin collections. So that explains the utility charges. In terms of fee revenue, the methodology for determining the fee revenue is not dissimilar. So we forecast volumes of transactions under fees as well. Fees that have experienced higher than budgeted forecast volumes include planning and development application fees, waste commercial fees, plumbing regulatory fees, and also plant ceiling fees. In addition to that, we have noticed that infringement notices issued have increased, and that's due to improvements in resourcing and also the frequency of patrols across the city.
Judy Holden, benefit from it.
Also contributing to that, Councillor Hughes, is the RPAC activation, and that's contributing to improved venue hire.
Oh, right.
Licence fees are also playing a part in there, so due to new food safety standards and also Food Act amendments. The third line item, interest received, is also favourable when compared to budget, and that's interest is generated on our cash holdings, which are in excess of $200 million. The QTC interest rate is underpinned by the RBA official cash rate, which has remained steady at 4.35% since November, which is rather strong. The fourth and final item contributing to the variance in revenue is lower than anticipated grant subsidies and contributions. Now this is purely a timing issue. So in May we have forecast for local roads and community infrastructure grant, which hasn't occurred yet, but we do expect that to occur. And also the 1 mile jetty funding for the 1 mile jetty, which works are not progressing at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rendell?
Mine's not a question, it's a comment. That I too was looking at the higher than projected revenue, and I know from some work that we've been doing that I estimate that in the southern North Bay Islands we've had close to an 80% population growth since the last census, based on the number of garbage bins that are issued and collected. So I think some of that is population growth being higher than expected. And I would expect also a significant proportion of the fees are related to development applications around that, and also the harvesting of parking fines in Wyndham Creek. And I have initiated some discussions with our finance area to begin to look at the proportion of revenue coming in from the islands over time.
You. Sorry, Councillor Mulgari.
Oh, just following on from Councillor Rendell's, maybe an officer could explain how the revenue from every division across the city actually isn't done divisionally, but it goes into the whole of city uses. If a finance officer can explain how the rates are used.
Now's probably not the time, because it's taken me quite a while to get to.
Thank you. Michael, are you able to? Against CFO?
So through you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Bulgari. So revenue is collected citywide, so the rates and charges are applied citywide. You are correct in that observation. And the monies are used to provide a wide range of services to the community. In terms of our financial system, there are limitations on how we can report there with respect to the divisions, but we can investigate that further and come back should that be the desire of those reports.
Thank you. And I'll just remind councillors, Councillor Endorse, that if you want to reply, that you come through the chair, not directly to other councillors. I believe we had him going back. Can I put the motion?
Back to Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, to sum up.
No, comfortable with what's been said there.
Thank you. All right, I now put the motion. Carried unanimously.
Councillor Hewlett's absent.
And noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent due to illness. Moving on to agenda item number 13.2, which is Queensland Audit Officer's Interim Management Report 23 to 24. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Boglari. Seconder? Councillor Hughes. Councillor Boglari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, keep pressing that button. We're so used to it. We're conditioned, aren't we? This is just an interim report from the Queensland Audit Office for our financial year ending on the 30th of June this year. On page 43 of the report are all the results, if anyone is interested to read, and it's based on our financial statements that they audit. So all the information's in the report if anyone wants further information.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers? So, Councillor Hughes, did you have a question? Yes?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'm not sure who would be able to answer the question, but we've got the Queensland Audit Office Interim Management Report, and we've noticed that they've got the action timeline and that there's on the status the action dates. And I'm just liking to double check with our team that these dates, action date September 24 and the other date 31st of December 24, are these dates on track and achievable, please?
Through you, Chair, and thank you again for the question, Councillor Hughes. I've canvassed my colleagues across the organisation and can confirm that the action item timeframes are achievable and on track.
That's great, really good news. And through you, Mayor, that is kudos to our team because there's some big items they're working through. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments or questions? I'll put the motion.
Back to Councillor Boglari.
Oh, sorry, Councillor
No.
Boglari.
Nothing further to say.
Thank you. Put the motion. Carried unanimously, acknowledging that Councillor Gillett is absent today. Agenda item number 13.3, revenue policy, investment policy, application of dividends and tax equivalent payments policy, constrained cash reserves, administrative directive, conceals needs policy and financial hardship policy. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Mitchell, seconder. Councillor Colley. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor. The purpose is to seek adoption of a number of policies here today. And while that may seem very administrative, I think it's really important to point out to the community, all of us councillors get a lot of questions around, why does council do things in a certain way? And by having a read of these policies and the guidelines, the community can really be informed and maybe be pleased. They might be surprised or at least be informed of how we go about things. Just to point out a couple of points, so the revenue policy, this is the how and why of rates and other fees and charges. How does that come into council and why do we do it in that way? The investment policy, how, why and where can council invest this public money wisely and safely to help keep downward pressure on rates? And things like the concealed leaks policy or financial hardship policy. These two policies help to put a little bit of fairness, kindness and equity around things such as those unknown water leaks or individuals or businesses that might be doing it a little bit tough. So these sort of motions come to us and often flick through, but they really are the bread, the butter and the heart of what council does. So just to encourage the community to have a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I put the motion. Sorry.
Question?
Yes, sorry.
Are
Councillor
we
Hughes.
for and against? What are we doing?
Yeah, sorry. Are there any speakers against the motion?
Well, I've got a question
No.
and potentially speaking against. But I've got a
Councillor
question.
Hughes.
Thank you. And I want to speak directly, and I have done year on year regarding the financial hardship policies. And Natalie, if you could go to that financial hardship policy thing.
I need a page.
It's in the attachments, it's the final attachment.
Page 74.
Yeah, and down to page 74, yeah. And just in the policy objective there,
in this, that second paragraph, customers must be assessed for financial hardship and will be required to provide information about their financial status to access a payment plan under this policy. And it's my understanding, and again, year on year, I've talked about this, but can we be reassured that anyone at any time can approach council, not necessarily under the hardship policy, but to seek a payment plan if they are having difficulty in paying their rates? Thank you. Rates. Yeah.
Through you,
Acting
Chair.
CFO, yeah.
Yeah. Through you, Chair, and thank you for the question again, Councillor Hughes. So I can provide assurance that residents can approach council at any time to advise of financial stress they may be experiencing. In most cases, an application for financial hardship is not needed, as the finance team, in particular the accounts receivable team, can establish a payment plan for rates and charges. To highlight this, finance has negotiated 566 payment plans in the last quarter and 418 payment plans in the prior quarter. A payment arrangement will ensure that rates are paid in a timely manner, with regular payments seeing the account return to order without the need for a financial hardship application. Where a payment arrangement is successfully negotiated, interest does not accrue on overdue rates and charges. That's an important point. And should the hardship or financial stress be severe, and that's the intent of the hardship policy, residents will need to apply or supply council with financial hardship application and the appropriate supporting documentation in line with the revenue policy and the financial hardship policy.
So, thank you. Through you, Mayor, back to our acting CFO. Thank you. So we've got about 1,000 families, is that right? 400 and 500, somewhere there? About 1,000 families currently on a payment plan.
So the numbers I quoted, in excess of 500 in the current quarter and 400 in the prior quarter.
Oh, so they may be the same families?
They could be, and additionally to that, those payment plans may have been satisfied up until now. So the approach is to establish the payment plan and seek a successful resolution.
And then on the hardship, under this hardship policy, we've only got, I think, one customer.
Yep, that's correct.
On the
Hardship policy.
And, okay. If anyone's got, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Right, any other speakers? Any other questions? All right, I now put the motion. Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Agenda item number 13.5. Sorry, 13.4. Which is the operational, the big one, the operational plan for the performance report March 2024. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Boglari, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Boglari, would you like to speak to the motion?
An operational plan is something that council adopts every year, and then we get these updates for various quarters with the work involved. It's a very thorough document, and I believe this year's been a little bit of a strain on our officers to get work done with the increased costs and the weather and everything, so they have done a good job. I did have some questions to ask, and I don't know, I'm happy to leave it or and get them offline or ask them. Yep. Well, I just wanted to. Sorry.
Yeah, we might. I might.
Yep, sure.
Yep. For and against, and then move into questions.
Yep.
Any speakers against? No. Now you can ask questions. Going back to you. Sorry, Councillor. I'm moving. Thank you.
Sorry.
Bear with me while I'm still learning.
No, I shouldn't have done that either. I wasn't expecting to move it.
Speakers for.
Oh, I'm speaking for. Yeah, thank you. The operational plan quarterly performance report is our opportunity to publicly highlight and thank the organisation and council officers for the work they do in implementing the initiatives and projects outlined in our corporate plan. Now, I won't labour over all the details, but there is a couple of activities I'd like to highlight, and the first is the Redlands Coast Youth Action Plan. This report that we have in front of us is for the third quarter of the financial year, so it doesn't actually reflect that the action plan has been completed as it was finalised in quarter four. And I want to take this opportunity to give credit where it's due, and it's not to a council candidate who the media credits for being the instigator of this plan. The development and consultation on the Youth Action Plan began early in 2023, long before candidates announced their intention to run. Officers involved in the development, consultation and completion of this plan were from our communities group under Group Manager Brooke Denholder, with work done by the Strengthening Communities team through Service Manager Jennifer Fredericks and Jess Sattler, our Community Development Officer. There were many other officers across several departments who worked in collaboration to deliver our Youth Action Plan, and we appreciate and acknowledge the good work you've done to highlight how important the youth are of our community through this action plan. Of note is Willard Farm is halfway through the restoration works. There's been a delay from the wet summer, so these works are now expected to be completed in August. Council continues to cultivate relationships to attract investment and economic development in the Redlands. Council led a trade delegation to India in January to explore trade and investment opportunities and hosted the 10th Manufacturing Industry Networking event in February. Amongst our BAU activities to ensure the Redlands remains a safe place to live and play, Council undertook fire risk mitigation across the city, water quality monitoring samples from our recreational swimming areas over the summer, and detection and prevention of invasive biosecurity matter inspections were conducted, and Council continues to work with the Council of Mayors of South East Queensland on waste management. It's a noteworthy report for the community to read to gain a greater understanding of the work that our Council officers do, so thank you to all of them.
All right, I'd like to add my comment to in thanking all officers for the tremendous amount of work going through the plan for the first time and the quarterly performance report. It's clear to see the dedication that everyone exhibits in relation to their roles within council. Any other comments? Councillor Reynolds?
I'd also like to make a comment in relation to the key initiative 11.4, which was the advocacy for the islands as a regional status. I've certainly observed over the past 2 months that I've been in council, that council has been very proactive in reaching out to the islands. We've had visitations to the islands by senior management and further visits by the alternate CEO plan. So I think we're well on the way of creating that engagement with the islands to advocate for regional status and economic development on the island. So thank you to the council officers involved.
Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments, Councillor Boglari?
Oh, thank you. I was going to comment on the islands as well, because we keep advocating for the regional status, but we just can't get it. And I did send through, is there any other way we can involve our reasoning to try and get that? On page 92, it mentions our sports fields down at Heinemann Road still haven't commenced, due to the EPBC Act implications down there. I thought the Act was only for the western side, not along the eastern side, so I wanted to check that, because the longer this is delayed, it's just going to exacerbate the amount of shortage we have in Redlands. So the EPBC Act also is affecting where the fields are going, not just that western corner.
Yeah, so thank you. Through you, Mayor. So I think picking up on the advocacy question for the islands, look, it's still officers' view that advocating for regional status is the right thing to continue to do.
I agree.
And if anything, we probably need to step up our efforts, because the current federal government has actually removed the regional status of the islands that they previously recognised. So whilst the state government hasn't recognised them as a regional status, now the federal government's also rescinded their status for that. So we continue to fight the good fight. And I think on behalf of our residents, to point to why it's critically needed, the residents are in the lowest 4% nationally of the index of relative social disadvantage. They are akin to every other regional town where the rest of that 4% sits. So we need to continue to advocate for that. And in particular, we know some community groups at the moment are interested to access some regional funding to deliver a community centre on the islands. And indeed, I believe the state member supports that initiative without understanding that indeed they're not qualifying for any regional status. So a lot of our state government members and federal government members don't even understand that they're not classified as regional. We see them as being akin to small country towns, just with water between them rather than some dirt roads. So I don't believe that we need to change our tactic. If anything, we need to dial it up. In relation to Heinemann Road or the sports precinct, no, the referral's over the entire site, so it's not a matter of us being able to proceed with the sports fields whilst we deal with the balance. You may recall when the state started workshops in December of last year, the reason for that is that the federal government, through its Department of Environment, and a lot of other initials that go with that department, now consider grass areas between koala habitat trees to also be koala habitat. So whilst the sports field area that we're largely dealing with has very isolated number of trees across it, the federal government now considers that entire area of paddocks to be koala habitat. Therefore, that all needs to be offset through the development of fields. So it's certainly the referrals over the entire site. We have done quite a lot of work and progressed that. So we submitted our response to that. So the federal government in November last year issued essentially a declaration to us saying what is our pathway forward, called the preliminary documentation. We responded to that documentation in April of this year. We've had some early interactions with them, and we've solved the vast majority of their questions and concerns, but there might be still a few more to go. We would anticipate that we perhaps another 6 to 12 months to continue to go in that process, depending on whether any external offsets are ultimately required. It's not our view, an officer position, that we do need external offsets, but we're at their mercy at the moment, Councillor. So until we get that all the way through, we can't develop any part of that site.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that clarity, because I'm getting asked by members of various groups that live in my area, what was happening. So I just wanted to have that on the record, and we've got that. Just for clarity, I didn't mean to dial down your advocacy. I was asking for how can we be more, how can we dial it up? How can we be more efficient? Because we actually need to retain that. So sorry if you misunderstood. I wanted to ask with Willard's Farm. It's mentioned in the OPEX that we're halfway through renovations. What community engagement or project going, once it's finished, are we going forward with? Because I'm hoping that sounds like it might be within 12 months, which would be awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, through you there. So that was obviously a status update at the end of March. We've obviously progressed significantly further through then. Councillor Mackenzie noted that our last update to you all was that we expected to have that finished in August of this year. That's probably slid a little bit further as a result of some recent activities on site, which we mentioned to you and to the community that there was some asbestos found in part of the site that slowed up the restoration. So that's now probably likely to be an October finish for that. Then we'll move in after that to do the landscaping in the grounds. That's our plan of that. We have two issues moving forward that we need to deal with. Because of the EPBC referral that we will now undertake on that whole site, we now have to also stop work on the balance of the Birkdale site, which includes the access and the car parking. So we're going to be in an unfortunate situation as a result of the wider picture, where we'll have a really lovely refurbished building, but we won't be able to then provide any access or car parking to service that building as a result of, I guess, another hand of cards we've been dealt there. So officers are working our way through some possible options where we can perhaps collaborate with the church next door, which we've certainly done in the past to provide access through that, but that's at their discretion, and we need to work our way through that. And then the second issue, which again we'll work our way through the final steps of this refurbishment, is whilst we preserve this heritage building as I guess as an emergency works to kind of make sure that it wasn't going to get into worse condition. Like all good bureaucracies that kind of come along the way, the Building Code of Australia is very, very stringent, and we're now in this really challenging position where essentially it's a residential building and it's classed like that under the Building Code. To move it to an alternate use, so if it was say to be a museum or some other kind of thing, that would be a different categorisation in the Building Code. It brings with it different obligations under the Building Code, which could include things like fire escapes and sprinklers, all of which can't be achieved to comply with the state heritage listing. So we're essentially going to be backed into the corner by the strictness of the state heritage listing and then the obligations of the Building Code to restrict future use of that site. We need to work our way through that, but we'll certainly look to have as much community use of that site as we can. But at this stage, we don't have any firm plans as a type of organisation of what that building will be used. We'll certainly, once we resolve what we think are possible uses, then we will work that through both with the community, and indeed there's workshops and meetings happening with officers and we should discuss that exact topic.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Maybe we can see how Ormiston House, Newstead House and all them get around those hurdles and, yeah, look forward to working on it.
They haven't changed the uses council.
Well, they did at some stage.
Thank you. Final question, Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Chris, so just in a nutshell, we're renovating a building that potentially we can't use unless we do further expenditure and research to see what we can use it for, which will then have to modify again if we wish to bring it into line with, say, a cafe, paddock plate style restaurant, something to do with heritage, etc. And this was brought about because of the interaction. We've actually made the submissions to basically bring it to a halt.
So Councillor, and through the Mayor, so it's probably not quite true. There's a raft of uses that we can do on that site without needing to do further adjustments. A cafe, since you used that example, is one that we definitely would need or wouldn't be able to use that building for, because we would need to have grease traps, exhaust systems, fire suppression sprinklers, and we know we've worked that through with the Heritage Department that that's not the use that they will support in the future. So there is a significant number of uses that can occur in that site without further works happening in the future.
Is there an example? Because I'm looking at it from the perspective of that the renovation works are being undertaken now. It's actually community groups who have got us to this point, right? So that we purchased it, renovated it, stock it under the So what would be something we could use it for, knowing that there's no parking, etc., apart from it looks nice, and if we ask someone else next door to use their car park where people can walk to it, what could we use it for now, once it's completed, without it costing the council any more money?
So the short-term parking is just a short-term thing, so we can work our way through that. By short-term, it might be a year before we can resolve that. So in the longer term, that will be resolved, and that might limit how we can use the site in the short term. But in the longer term, uses such as galleries, museums, all those things that Councillor Bogler mentioned should be suitable under the building code. We can work our way through that. We also need to determine what we consider to be the right use of that site for the long-term integration with the rest of the parkland, how sustainable that use is, and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of factors going into it. I believe we've spent money to restore a building worthy of restoration, and it's certainly been able to be used by council or the community for a raft of uses.
Let's hope that those same community groups don't step in there to dictate what it can't be used for.
All right, I think I will now put the motion and move on, considering this is for noting. So, those in favour of the motion?
Do I get to sum up?
Sorry, summing up, Councillor Mackenzie.
Councillor
Oh, sorry, it's actually Councillor Boglari.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you moved it.
You moved it.
Yeah, I moved it. You seconded it. Yeah. No, I think it's been a good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Boglari. All right, and now put the motion. Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Now to 13.5, Business Continuity Management Policy. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Another one of these policies that you could gloss over, but really critical, and without causing a panic out there in the community. These things, if we had a cyber attack or pandemics or natural disasters or national labour shortages or long-term power outputs and things that are much less impactful than that, this is how council then will manage its activities and business to restore functions as quick as possible. A lot of documentation will sit behind this, and there were some questions from councillors around the detail, but just to rest assured, the council does work very carefully on making sure that those crucial services to the community, in case of disruptions, are maintained or restored as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Are there any speakers against? Are any speakers for the motion? All right, now put the motion.
Question.
Sorry, question, councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Natalie. On the first page, 15.5, page 142 of the report. In the background, I'm talking to paragraph 3. There's focuses on restoring critical business functions and minimising the impact of disruptive events on the operations. And through you, Mayor, I'd just like to ask that I understand that Council has held a simulation or similar recently, and maybe we could have an update on that, how that impacted and the lessons learned, benefits, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Chair. I assume we're not talking about the incident this morning, but Council responds to service disruptions daily. The last major one we had, which was a national event, that was the Optus outage, that was back in November. Before then, obviously, we had labour supply and it affected all aspects of council business and community business, which this policy is geared at restoring those services to communities as soon as possible. You can see in the background documents that we test our business continuity plan and our policy framework. So quite correct, we tested it back in December. Looking at our telecommunications and our IT systems. We tested again back in March this year, looking again at cyber, which is telecommunications, IT systems, together with our major infrastructure in different ways. So part of the policy framework is to test those systems, socialise it with our staff and our key stakeholders.
Great, thank you. And further, when we talk about in the policy statement, we've got a .5 managing employee fatigue, and we've been briefed several times with our CEO when we have weather events and major events, be it our IM, that our staff truly do go over and above to what maybe the expectation is in the private sector. Our staff are tremendous when needed to step up, when we need them after hours, in the pouring rain, etc., all of those sorts of things. But managing employee fatigue. So I'm really keen to understand that we've got those incidents that we've heard anecdotally, that we've got that in hand. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. It's in his hand as much as possible. So we're 20. Sorry. Yeah, correct. So we have a 24/7 business. We have on-call staff. Yeah. We have rotating shift works. We have support staff that support those workers. We have escalation points for key decision making during those phases. We have succession planning for our key technical staff. You can also see in the policy, we're an integrated approach. So whether it's a cyber incident or a disaster incident, we integrate with the state and federal disaster management framework. So we call on those resources as well. It is really an all-in type of response. And there's some other questions raised by the community. This is a really policy focused on our community services. And the community also help our response. We've got community champions, we have a lot of community chaplains, community volunteers, SES. They're all part of the policy framework that's the broader enterprise infrastructure framework.
Yeah, so as Councillor Mitchell said, there's a whole lot behind this, and we really appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now put the motion. So Councillor Mitchell, sum up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will have those few comments. Appreciate the questions from Councillor Hughes, just further highlighting some of the backing to this, and it was fairly nice reminder this morning. There was a small disruption to this very meeting through technology, and I'm sure that will have been practiced. And so the officers were able to have a quick response to to get us back online. So that was a good example of how these policies act out in real life. Talking about real life, I was thinking as questions were asked, this is another example that this sort of practical insurance policies don't come without a cost, and they're hidden costs behind the business that the community will never see, and hopefully they never have to worry about them because they're just so good and in place. But there is time, money and effort that goes into it, and that's reflected in rates and fees and charges, and around we go in the circle. So yeah, thank you for the questions, Councillor Hughes, and happy to see the motion put.
All right, now put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent and Deputy Mayor Tolsey is absent from the room. Moving to agenda item number 14, I don't have any...
13.
Sorry, 13.6, pages sticking together. Red Heart Proprietary Limited non-trading company closure. And do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Mackenzie, seconder. Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, it's very straightforward in the report that this is a non-trading company that's had no operational activity for a number of years, so we're closing it.
Any speakers against? All comments?
Yes, just a question. Just acknowledging that the resource that this relates to does still allow officers to continue to manage that under the normal processes, and there's no interruption to previously a service that this was a company that oversaw those activities. Just a clarification through the chair to officers.
Through the chair, Councillor, it wasn't a company that oversaw the quarry operations. It was a company related to it. That is when you change the quarry material to a mine. So all the company did is a mining lease. It hasn't been trading for over a decade. Absolutely no adverse impact on council's quarrying operations, and in fact there'll be some efficiencies by de-registering the company.
Thank you, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to sum up?
No, thank you.
Right, put the motion. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Agenda item number 14. I note there are no reports listed on the agenda for AMP. Agenda item number 15, reports from community and customer services. 15.1 is the Creative Arts Service Strategic Plan 24 to 29, and I would like to acknowledge the work that the team has done in putting this plan together. We spoke about it at length previously during workshops, and it's pretty exciting. Agenda for 15.1, councillors, I know that the attachment has had some minor updates which have been distributed to you all. The recommendation on the screen reflects this. I have a mover, Councillor Boglari, seconded by Councillor Bishop. Councillor Boglari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Happily. Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to also commend the RPAC team, because our arts, in all the varieties of arts in Redlands, got devastated during COVID. And I feel our RPAC team have not only risen to the challenge of restoring it, but you've knocked it on the head. You've done amazing efforts down there, and I'm saying this from absolutely everybody. I said the other day in the workshop that friends have commented to me that they're going to shows there now where they never went, and even the front office staff, they have said how helpful they were when they were getting their tickets on the night because Grandma forgot hers and all this type of thing. So your customer service is exemplar, but you're going out and checking with the community as to what they want, and you delivering that has been absolutely brilliant. I've written here, after listening to the passion the workshop was delivered to the other day, that not only does our RPAC team have the drive and passion for the arts, but they're also extremely skilled in the business dimension of RPAC. aligning the strategy with state and federal priorities to be able to tap into funding and future investments. And that is really important. It's no good just putting on whomever I want to go and see. Rolling Stones might be a bit hard, but but you are tapping into and evolving the RPAC to get that future funding, which is great and will allow us to increase even more. RPAC is definitely a revenue attractor now, but I can see it as a great tourism going forward. And as I mentioned the other day, when Councillor Bishop and I recently went to a show, I spoke to a couple of people from Bribie and they were staying here overnight. So somebody got that dinner, that overnight accommodation, and I presume breakfast and maybe some petrol on the way home. So it is not just the arts and all the social benefits, but it's an economic benefit for the city too. And it's all in that report. And I just want to say well done, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to publicly give you all a pat on the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against? Councillor Collins.
As a council, we're committed to delivering services which cater for the broad range of needs and interests within our city, including arts and culture. The millions of dollars which we invest in arts and culture every year through Redland Performing Arts Centre, Redland Art Gallery and Regional Arts Development Fund, RADF grants, is money well spent as far as I'm concerned. Our organisation is blessed to have an outstanding team who oversee the creative arts portfolio and who bring joy to thousands of people each month through the services they deliver and the programs which they facilitate. I have sat in the concert hall at RPAC and seen the emotional response elicited from audience members as they have watched performances and connected with those on stage. I have experienced it myself. I've read the feedback provided by program participants, RPAC attendees, and those who have visited the art gallery. The services delivered by our team have a great impact on those who engage with them. They have a profound ability to build community and bring joy to those involved. Indeed, the strategic plan which is before us today outlines an explicit intention to expand audience engagement, to reach and extend across Redland's coast, and to facilitate meaningful exchanges with the broader community. But how do we get there? I have concerns about the lack of community consultation which was incorporated into the development of this plan. Consultation was limited to local arts groups and a local Indigenous group. The consultation occurred 3 years ago. At no point was the broader community consulted about what the creative arts service they pay for should look like. Why? When it comes to spending ratepayer funds, we should make evidence-based decisions. I'm not sure that there is sufficient evidence to suggest this strategic plan takes our creative arts service in the direction that the wider community wants it to go over the next 5 years. It is imperative to me that our strategic plans are co-designed with the community. They deserve to have some input. While I acknowledge the hard work done by council officers to develop this plan, and indeed the importance of having a plan, I cannot be sure that it reflects what the community wants in the absence of them being adequately consulted.
Thank you. Councillor Bishop.
Speaker 4.
Speaker 4.
Speaker 4, passionate speaker for the Creative Arts Service Strategic Plan 24 to 29, and absolutely acknowledge what Councillor Colley has just said in regards to consultation and the broad custodial role of the arts. I'll come to that in a moment, but before I do, I want to acknowledge that this is a Creative Arts Service Strategic Plan. It is not a cultural plan. It is for not just RPAC, it is for Redland Art Gallery. It is to guide Regional Arts Development Fund. It's co-developed, co-designed, co-funded by the Arts Queensland. And it really does touch on the broader arts and culture in Redland City. I was at RPAC last night at the citizenship ceremony, and after that I went to Redland Sinfonia, which were having their AGM there. I had to walk through Redland City Choir, who were rehearsing at the time, and sell the rehearsals for what will be a world premiere of the Bellew creative team who are putting on a production of Sand on Saturday night, which is an extraordinary collaboration. I think what this services strategic plan is seeking to do is to give some certainty and guidance to the assets that are managed by Redland City Council, and I think that is critical that we do that, and I think our team are best placed, and some great industry leaders doing a fine job of collaborating, participating with those members of the community, and also acknowledging our First Nations people from Hondamuka country who have always walked together in celebration of ceremony, culture, gathering. And I think that internationally, when the report refers to Brisbane 32 Olympic and Paralympic Games offers a rare opportunity to advance arts and culture within our region. When people come here in 2032, they will be looking for the international stories of what deeply resonates locally, and I think this plan is intending to take us in that direction. And I think our officers are doing a mighty fine job of that. I do note that the first 5 years is a strategic plan that is talking about our place and our time. I do encourage that we have broader consultation. In fact, I'm now going to switch to when I first came to Redland City in 2005. I was involved in what I believe some of the most exemplary cultural development practices in this country. And I refer to the Culture in the Redlands, a discussion paper, September 2007. It asks, what is culture? It talks about a wide and deep view of culture. It speaks about why should council concern itself with culture.
The councillor is so far off the item in front of us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I think I'm speaking directly to that because it helps us with the context of culture and its relevance, and I do believe going forward that we do need to have support for not only the officers but also our entire community, and I would encourage us more and more to look at good strategic policy planning, co-design, and encouraging the trajectory that this proposal is going on, and I would encourage us to widen and deepen that as we proceed. But thanks very much to the officers, it's very good work.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Are there any other speakers against? Councillor Rendell?
Is that again?
Oh, sorry.
That was
So
four.
Oh,
and now
sorry.
against.
I'm sorry, because I popped it.
In speaking against this motion, it is not in any way providing a criticism of the council officers involved in the community arts program and development strategic plan. Coming from the islands comprise probably 5 to 6% of the population. The plan has an incredible focus on quantity, which I share. I think it's really important, but that's 2% of the population. The other benefits that flow from strategic arts initiatives are the financial development in the areas in which the performances and that take place. And that's been noted by everybody, whether it's staying overnight or buying a coffee or a meal. And my concern, and it's not just with arts, it's across the board. Very good planning takes place, but you forget that 5 or 6% of the population live on islands that are not that accessible to RPAC, not that accessible to the Redland Art Gallery. RPAC donates and makes available its venue for productions. We don't have any production capacity on the islands. But we talk about maybe MIAC, that gets mentioned in it. But earlier in the meeting today, Mayor, you yourself commended Archie Moore for the work that he's been doing on land. Islands do not get a mention in this plan. And that is the reason why I cannot support it. I think they need to go away, they need to consult with the islands, they need to look at the range of activities that are going, whether it's Linda Faulkner, whether it's Trish and the weaving, whether it's Canipa Connections. None of these have any focus in the plan at all. So that's why I'm not supporting this.
Well, thank you. General Manager, would you like to comment?
Thank you very much, Mayor. And look, I do enjoy the conversations and hearing the different views around the chamber. And that diversity of view and opinion is what makes Redlands great and is what makes our community great. I think this is an exceptionally good creative arts service strategic plan. It is building on what the officers have already been doing over a period of time. And I acknowledge what Councillor Boglari mentioned in terms of COVID and the impact on the arts. What we learned from that very much was that people felt disconnected, people felt isolated, and they were really crying out for an opportunity to connect. And that's what our creative arts team has done. They've created opportunities for connection for community. And some of the great work that they've done, you've already heard earlier during the course of the meeting, the Mayor referred to the LGMA award finalists with Sing Sing Sing, which was a creative arts opportunity for working with people with dementia in a choir format. Now that choir not only impacted the people with dementia, but their families and their carers that had an opportunity to come together and connect. And that was from right across the entire city where people were invited to come along. And picking up on Councillor Colley's point about getting research and feedback, we used a customer sentiment tool to understand what feedback was from people who were participating, and we adjusted timeframes of some of those events and activities so people could be able to make connections and transport opportunities to get to rehearsals and performances and opportunities. That also extended into the performances that we had for our rock choir. And there's countless opportunities in the performing arts and also in the art where we have embraced a diverse section of the community, not only on the mainland, but in the island space as well. I do acknowledge Councillor Rendell's comments and your advocacy and strong passion for the islands, and we do need to have that voice around the table. I think if you look at the plan itself, the themes that the officers are referring to, and it is high level, we're not talking about one person doing this or one person doing that. We're talking about strategic pillars, a strategic pillar of engagement, of partnerships, spaces. It is very clearly articulated in this document that we're looking to increase and diversify access to experiences that reach out and extend across Redlands coast. It doesn't say mainland, it says Redlands coast. And it does also talk about alternative spaces. It talks about reviewing existing facilities and the plan for infrastructure and acknowledging the valuable contribution of public art and the use of multimedia. So we're challenging ourselves to look at different ways of doing things. The other strategic pillars include people and sustainability. And I draw you to the attention to the comments that were made when we talked about finance and some of the other reports earlier today, where we were acknowledged the increase in activation of RPAC and the increased revenue that were being attracted. This plan has been formulated and developed by experts in the arts and creative fields that have drawn upon not only their own knowledge, but what is happening best practice in the industry and are leading our footprint in this space in the creative arts area. They are already seeing activation increase, they are already seeing revenue increase, they are seeing grant attraction opportunities for this council, and what this plan does is acknowledge that. I will address the minor amendment that has been made, and really what that was in response to some really quality conversation that we did have with council in the lead up to this meeting. And what it was about was, what can Redlands Coast be known for? And what our council wanted us to actually do is highlight up front that Redlands Coast is already recognised as a beacon of creativity and cultural innovation. And I think that's a really important starting point to say, we're not starting new, we are already recognised as a strong beacon. And kudos to council, because you also then wanted us to include that we're also known for our strong ancient living First Nations culture. So that was added to that part of that document as well. And the comments that we work hand in hand to develop that rich cultural exchange. So councillors, I value and appreciate your feedback. We do have opportunities through the yearly operational plans and through budget processes. And we are keen to hear the feedback of our new council as well, so that we do embrace the feedback, not only from you, but from our community and from the arts sector, so that we can deliver the best program possible But I think we have a number one team. I think we have punched well above our weight, and I commend this plan too.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers for? Councillor Mitchell?
That wasn't you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will speak for this strategic plan. I first want to acknowledge some of the concerns raised by councillors around the room, because I also shared some of those concerns. In the summary statement, the plan talks to transcending of traditional boundaries. But some of the concerns in our discussions and today question whether the engagement and some of the language was actually staying well within boundaries that are known and the usual people who are incredibly important. But we're questioning whether, are we serious about transcending those traditional boundaries and reaching out? But I think within the document, there's plenty of scope to do that, to bring in those players, those voices, whether they be on any of our islands or any of our suburbs, into the tent and have them equally valued, not just in the words, the lines between the words here, but really front and centre. So I've got faith in that. So this way I'll trust the team, I'll trust the people. I think they're an incredible group, but there is room to shine an even bigger spotlight on those people that are outside what the traditional boundaries are. So we'll be holding the team and council to account for transcending those boundaries, and I see it in action. I love the place down there, and I see the benefit that's coming through. But the group of councillors do reflect the community, and so the team has heard, I'm sure, those concerns. So I'll be putting my hand up in support, and it's because I trust the officers and the people, and I trust what I've been told, and there's plenty of scope within this document to see that come to life. Thank you.
Thank you. Against?
I just have a question at the end.
No other comment against? Any questions, comments? Yes, Debbie?
I just wanted to ask through you, Mayor, if we could have a comment from an officer as to how this plan will practically affect the financial viability of council's practices in order to encourage arts, but also reduce the burden on ratepayers.
Gentlemen?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and that's an excellent question. One of the underlying principles that we've got is to activate the centre and to increase revenue opportunities, but it is a service to the community. Like a sports field is a service to a community, you know, like a footpath is a service to a community. Will it ever be, if you like, the golden goose for council in terms of revenue opportunities? Perhaps not, but we're doing everything we possibly can to ensure that we have, firstly, community access and activation. What is a premier venue? People from other areas have actually referred to our concert hall as one of the best. So it's not something that you would actually, it's not a community hall, so please don't get me mistaken with that. It's not activated in a community hall. It is a specialist space and area. So we're always looking at how can we activate, how can we generate revenue opportunities, and how can we diversify to improve that position, or at least not worsen it. I hope that helps your question.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Bulgari, would you like to sum up?
Oh, yes, thank you. And thank you, Louise, for, General Manager Louise was on, for answering those questions. I think the consultation question was adequately answered, and definitely the fear that we'd missed out our islands, because on that page 162 it says activate art spaces and experience around and outside cultural facilities, and that is across Redlands Coast. And Redlands Coast, we all know, embraces all of Redlands Coast, including all our wonderful islands. I think it shows that we're going to have a wonderful holistic support for all our arts, and it's a holistic view of all of Redlands, but it gives certainty to people like myself who have no talent in this field, that and councillor, not that you don't have any talent,
I'm with you.
but you constantly go there. It gives, we're going to have a great few years ahead of us with the fabulous programs and all these different innovative ideas that you have. And I think Redlands Coast is very passionate about the arts, and we're delivering to them through this strategy. So thank you to the RPAC etc. team.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barry. And that's not true, by the way. You're doing pottery.
I have started pottery.
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 With the chooks.
All right.
No, down at our natural place.
I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? So we have Councillor Boglari, Councillor Guy, Councillor Guy, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Bishop and myself. Against, we have Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Colley, and noting Councillor Hewitt is absent. Motion is carried. Item number 15.2, adoption of the RAL.
Yeah, mine's timed out too, sorry.
The boundary fence contribution policy.
Here's a bit of fun.
Sorry, Chair, with this particular one, I couldn't quite understand, because I was online for that particular workshop, I was just trying to get a better understanding from officers what this was exactly about.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you could just do like a 3-minute summary.
Summary,
Please,
Olive?
yeah, thank you.
Is that usual question related to that too?
I think it would help with the context.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to get it moved first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to move.
All right. Do I have
I'll second.
Do I have a mover? So Councillor Bishop, seconded by Councillor Golly. Councillor Bishop, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just acknowledging that this is to establish council's policy in line with the Neighbourhood Dispute Dividing Fences and Treaties Act 2011 in relation to requests from property owners for contribution to cost of a shared boundary fence by creation of this policy. I think it would be useful if there is an officer, just to give some context for people, because the landscape has changed in terms of the Act, and just to have some understanding from officers, if possible, for context. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask for officer comment and elaboration now, if that's possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do have officers here. I was just giving them a little bit of context to the 2-minute conversation before they walked in the door, so that they're aware that you're looking for a just brief overview of that presentation. Very brief overview of the presentation. So we have Rod Baxter from our property team who will be speaking.
If I could just add something.
Thank you.
And can
I could just add something to that, please?
Thank you very much, Strategic Policy Manager. Yes, Councillor Golly.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So what I'm seeking to understand, is this a policy that's going to mitigate council responsibility where we have easements for access to like urban residential property fence lines to say scribbly gums? Are we actually trying to mitigate that responsibility having to? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Just getting to
Yeah. If we can, and hear your summary on it.
Just a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know how many were online on Monday, but essentially the legislation changed 2011. So it's been in place for some time. when the legislation was reviewed and changed, what was previously an exemption for council on most properties, on most contributions, was essentially taken away. Reserves remain on a, we're not talking about kind of list, but anything in freehold, and that was the distinction they made, we are liable under the legislation except where it's a park. So that's been the point of the policy, because the park wasn't well defined, or the term park wasn't well defined in legislation. A couple of years after the legislation went through, the Queensland Law Reform Commission, Law Commission, did a review based on a submission from a couple of the bigger councils and through the Department of Local Government, but their final finding was that there's no need to reword the definition, which left us all in a position of, well, what's a park? Is a park a park? You know, what defines a park? And we've been not struggling, but you know, we've having to have those conversations with a number of applicants, and we've been challenged more recently on what. So if you go into ReadyMap, there might be a reckon open space, a park over the top, or there might not. So the policy that we drafted and the guidelines around it take a reasonable approach where council will be able to base a decision on some simple framework of it's got a sign and it's got things that you'd expect in a park like swings or roundabouts or whatever. We're still exempt for reserves, but where it gets tricky is where we have, as you suggested, we have drainage areas, not always easements, sometimes they're in freehold. So if the drainage easement is in freehold and there are no other things on that drainage easement that might imply park, then we won't be exposed to any more fees. The only examples that I could find that this policy would leave us, and look, we're not trying to avoid the conversation, we're happy to look at every case when people come to us, and we've got a script that we'll probably update with ICCC that rules out the obvious no's, but when they do come to us, we'll still look at it on a case-by-case basis. The ones, I think the examples that I gave on Monday, from a residential area point of view, the property at Alexander Hills that we've just demolished the building for, which is actually a drainage, for drainage purposes, and at the moment it doesn't have a sign on it, it's not defined as a park. We would be liable, if the owners come to us and said, we're not putting a fence up, we'd be liable for 50% of the standing fence. The islands, though, are a little bit of a risk in the sense that there are a lot of residential properties on the islands that have adjoining owners that may or may not want fencing. So that's an area that we're going to have to look at carefully, and there are some other things that might influence that, and it might be about what we do with the zoning long term, or amalgamating bigger parcels and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, to answer your immediate question, things that are specifically designed for drains aren't used secondarily for parks should still remain as we're not exposed. The only other one, I think I gave an example on Monday, was our offices and depots that are freehold and adjoining owners. So to the new building at 46 Middle Street that we bought, there's a neighbour there. He's doing some work at the back. If he approaches us, we want to put a fence up, then yes, we'll have to contribute.
Deputy Mayor?
So this happened in 2011. I've been in since 2012 and been told consistently by officers we are exempt. Every time someone approached me to see if council would pay for part of their fence where they aligned with parks or bushland. So in fact, that information wasn't correct. In some cases, we should have been contributing to the fence.
Good question. I can't answer for the specific requests that you might have had. I think there was a general understanding, and we have a forum with property officers across mostly South East Queensland, but other local authorities on a regular basis. This has come up a couple of times in conversation. Most of those, at the moment we have 12 or 13 active members that we talk to, councils. They treat it differently because there's no clarity in the legislation. So if there was an interpretation, it might have been based on the prior legislation or a lack of clarity from either the local government or the Queensland Law Commission around what the park is. So I can't really respond to specific inquiries, but the reason for the policy is to make sure that we have it, and particularly for you that receive liabilities, that there's a clear framework for people.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rendles, if we can make it concise.
Sorry?
If we can, I'm trying to move through, so if we can keep our conversations fairly concise. I know we're on a ticking time frame.
Thank you. A quick question that, as with Councillor Talty, my understanding and the understanding of everyone I know on the islands is council does not pay for fences.
Yeah.
So on a practical level, I don't think that we can. I do have a question though, that if council is wanting to put up a fence, like you take a bit of industrial land, you want to put a fence around it, or you define a place as a depot, are you going to ask the neighbouring residents to pay out for that fence?
Great question. I've not done that. I guess we look for some direction. My gut feel is, as a local government, we probably wouldn't ask the neighbour. No. But if I'm told otherwise, we can do that. It only covers, just partially to answer that, when we build property, and it might be that there is a need to put a fence up where there wasn't one before. I think as council, we would be obligated to put it up. Would we then approach, 15 residential properties for co-share? I don't think that'd go very well. I mean, it's more about a reputational risk than a financial one. Generally, those projects, the half cost of a 1.8 metre fence is insignificant in the project cost. But it's a good question. I just don't have a direct answer. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any more questions? Or we moving into, yeah? Okay, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. Natalie, the boundary fence contributions policy is page 168. And in that policy statement, the dot point at the bottom says ensuring all relevant information regarding boundary fence claims is available to the community. And I'm keen to understand, have we been doing that? Are we doing that? How will we do that? Thank you.
So currently we have a script with ICCC. So if somebody comes in through there, there is a script that gives them the information they need. As a policy, I understand that it will be available on the web page. We won't be actively pursuing it. From my perspective, it's a compliance thing to legislation, and we could open up a huge volume of work if we started to actively promote that. And again, because the legislation's been changed for some time, as a property purchaser, generally the public is expected to do its own due diligence. So, dividing fences is something that I think most people are aware of. If they're not, you need to talk to their solicitor rather than us lead them down that, because there's lots of legislation that as a joining owner, we're obliged to understand ourselves. So at the moment, the only communication will be a change to the script for ICCC, and I think you get that script, is that right? When we do that, I'm not sure on the process. No, we can certainly circulate the script to councillors just to be clear, and you have the policy. Do you have the guideline? Is that part of it? No. At all? No, just the policy. So I might just, I'll put something together that includes the script and the general, I guess, framework, so that we're all on the same page going forward.
Thank you.
Would that, through you, Mayor, thank you, would that also include an updated media release or statement?
we weren't planning on it. I'm just for the record, no, doesn't look like it, so.
Okay.
It is available, will be available through the minutes, councillor, so, you know, that is in the public domain.
All right, thank you. And councillor Bishop, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, thank you. Just acknowledging on page 165, the council's policy position will provide residents and council with clarity for when it may be liable to contribute. It will also provide council's ability to efficiently and transparently respond to adjoining owner requests. And I think that's what we're seeking to do. So
Right, thank you very much, councillor Bishop. Put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that councillor Hill is absent today. Thank you very much, Roy.
Yeah.
Agenda item number 13.3, base item Redland Transport and Mobility Study. Item 15.3, councillors, I note that attachment 5 of this item has some minor updates which have been distributed to you all, and the recommendation on the screen reflects this. We have, actually, do I have a mover for the person's recommendation? Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mitchell, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'd very much like to. Noting that we're being asked today, councillors, to present submission to the state government study, the Transport and Main Roads Mobility Study, Redland's Transport and Mobility Studies. So this is our submission to the state study. So I'll start by thanking the state for coming in and running the study, much needed. We'll add a couple of criticisms along the way. But I'll also note that there was some very positive engagement with the council officers, and that's also really welcome. So the submission is not meant to be kicking to the state or anyone else. It's meant to be a very heartfelt and helpful suggestion. So in the amended document that's in the report, I will point out a few things on the way. All of our islands, all of our Redlands Coast Islands were ignored in the state's study. So not just for our residents, but also the tourism elements. So I think we would all agree that high frequency and multimodal travel to our islands, including active travel, is needed, and significant expansion of the hours of service and smart ticketing, etc. Public transport, of course, we've all added into that. That's much needed all across our city and onto the islands. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming through, but I want to really say the global focus of this for me is in our country and in our state, there's been a long-term systemic and cultural failure on how transportation is being viewed. It's a focus on the single person motor vehicle, and we appreciate there's great engagement from the state, but what we need is spending and really a reinvention of the whole transportation network. Otherwise, we're heading in the way of Los Angeles and Sydney, and that will be a disaster for our area and our island. So alongside council's investment, we will need councillors, the state, to open up their strategic arms to change the direction, but also significantly open up the funding that will enable that transformational transportation and mobility shift. So all of that is sort of embedded within our advocacy document. But for our community, I want to reinforce this is our advocacy to the state, and I believe the federal government should be firmly on the hook for helping to fund this. We are Australian citizens, and this is not just a Redlands issue, but this is a Redlands advocacy document. It is a transformational piece that we need across our country, or this council, the next, the one after, and the one after that are just going to be having worse and worse and worse problems to solve. So this is really, really important advocacy document. We're not going to solve it by this advocacy, but it is a really important document that we have our say through to those states. So, yeah, with that, I'll open it up.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Any speakers against? Thank you.
letting open schools.
Councillor Bishop.
Just a comment, if I may, just acknowledging the tremendous work picking up on the views of council that has been done by a transport planning officer and team. There's some very important acknowledgements that do need to be reflected back to the state that have been integrated into this document. I'm very pleased to see discussion about a collaborative approach to addressing the Wyndham Creek and Toondah Harbour transition points because there's a lot of focus on car parks down there. I'd like to see a lot more flow and using public transport, active travel, and I think it's also an important thing to get the data sets necessary so that we can get that advocacy for regional and status, so that we can get advocacy for funding from the state and federal government with regards to the islands in particular. Also really pleased to see the links between Redland and Brisbane City, particularly Quarry Road being acknowledged as a major transport route with significant constraint and congestion on this route projected to be significantly greater. I agree that our city needs this corridor to be addressed by the state study, and I also urge that we update our own transport strategy to reflect that matter. Great to see the advocacy for the controlled intersection at Quarry-Birkdale Road. It's a safety concern for residents in that area, and also acknowledge the Shaw Street West intersection request there as well. In terms of active travel, point 7, it's good to see the Northern Greenway, which offers enormous potential to allow residents to use that area, but also reduce congestion during school times, people being able to get to school with other routes rather than everyone dropping their kids off at the same time and leading to congestion. And also the Lota Creek pedestrian cycleway crossing at Chelsea Road between us and Lota. It would be good to see that connected and upgraded because it goes underwater at high tide. There's some tremendous work and great advocacy, but I think the main focus is around collaboration with the state for shared outcomes, because wherever we need extra data sets, I think that's going to be critical going forward. Thanks to the officers and councillors for their work.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Bobo.
Oh, just a comment, ditto on everything Councillor Bishop just said, mentioning the Northern Greenway. I just wanted to mention the Shaw Street and Wellington Street roundabout. A previous mayor and I were in the Minister's office back in 2010 asking them for an upgrade of that roundabout because the officers told me in my very first term of council it had reached its potential. And it's still, here we are in 2024 and we're still advocating for it. So we haven't given up. It's a huge safety issue for children in Ormiston when they go to Cleveland High. They've got no safe access across, Shaw Street. If it was lit, they'd be able to walk. It's also for cyclists coming down Shaw Street. The cycle lane disappears and it has reached capacity with the traffic. So really pleased to see that one in there. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No? All right, Councillor Mitchell, would you like to sum up?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for all the comments, councillors, and also if I thank our officers, but I really do thank you for the work we're doing. Punching well above our weight with a small team, our transport team, and that's worth acknowledging as well. Councillor Bishop is absolutely right. It is about collaboration that is needed, and not just in words. We need the state and the feds to collaborate with investment and with their long-term strategies actually being meaningful, and they are. The data is absolutely critical, and I would support any drive by any level of government, including ours, to build an even stronger case. I would say though that look around the world, the Western world, we don't need any more data to tell us that if we do the same as we've done in the last 100 years, we are on a path to failure, a path to a non-livable Redlands and islands of disadvantage. So that's how serious I see the transportation issue. So we really need that collaboration now. This is not a roads and cars versus everything else argument. This is just elevating everything else to the same level and including all modes of transport, however that you choose to travel or need to travel, in the same conversation. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, councillors. The ridiculous level of investment in our, well, I shouldn't say that, the strong level of investment in roads, parking and those sort of things is welcome. We need to elevate the investment in all the others to match that, otherwise we will fail. We, all governments, all people. So while this is just an advocacy document, I think it is probably one of the most important issues for our city, if not the most important, transportation, and that includes our islands and the marine transport. So with that, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Right, I now put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, knowing that Councillor Hill is out. Item 15.4. Oakland Street, Alexander Hills, affordable housing policy application. Do I have a mover for the motion? Mackenzie, Councillor Mackenzie, seconded by Councillor Glory. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, because we did have a workshop on this, so I'm assuming councillors understand that last year we adopted a affordable housing policy to provide registered community housing providers incentives to support and encourage the delivery of affordable housing developments in the Redlands. That policy had two specific areas in it though, which was a kilometre from Cleveland train station and radius, and a kilometre radius from Calabar CBD. This application is for the reconfiguration of some units up in Alexander Hills, noting that this area where these units are is within walking distance to shops, medical facilities, public transport and schools. So even though it's outside those two areas, it's certainly within those kind of service areas that we're looking for. And the reason why this has come to us is because it's outside those two areas, and council then needs to approve the 50% discount on the development application fees. It's every other criteria of walking distance to everything else.
Thank you.
Just a question.
If I just go through the speakers, any speakers against? No question?
Yeah, my question just relates to, I acknowledge this is a very important incentive, and this is a slight departure from what we had intended in terms of geographic area. One of the things that we discussed in previous discussions is a potential review of the policy, just to consider going forward how we can make our decisions based on some guidelines. And what would be useful would be the feedback from the industry about where this is helpful, where it's working, and where it's meeting what our expectations were.
Madam Mayor, this is not speaking to this item. If the councillor wants to bring a review of the policy, he can do that at any time.
If you were at the workshop that we had, you would have heard that we talked about a policy. This relates to a departure from that policy. I'm requesting that we have that policy for future consideration brought back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. All right. Any other questions? No? All right, I now put the motion. Sorry, no, Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to sum up?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, now put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, knowing that noting that Councillor Hill is out of the room. Item 15.5, City Plan Administrative and Minor Amendment. Councillors, I note that the attachment for this item has had some minor updates which have been distributed to you all, and the recommendation on the screen reflects this. But it's a bit fuzzy.
It's been a long meeting.
There we go. There.
Oh, that's better.
All right, do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Mitchell, second by Councillor Barbari. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm fairly comfortable with the report, but there may be questions from the floor.
Any speakers against?
Speakers against?
Speakers against? No? Right, questions? Councillor Barbari?
Sorry, I haven't looked at this one since over the weekend. What was the amended in A? Wasn't anything vital, I don't think, it was just minor? Yep, okay, thank you.
There it is up on the.
An address.
Oh, councillor Toffey had a question the other day.
I think there was an address that needed to be updated.
Correct.
In it. I think that was about it.
Minor administrative.
Just checking.
Right, any other questions? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you. My question regards to page 199, the editor's note for the transport servicing, access and parking code. And the question to the team is, understanding from our background that when we have an editor's note, that's not binding, it literally is a note. And I'm seeking to understand what the weighting of the editor's note and what will be achieved with this editor's note and the intent. Thanks. Parking is a major issue. We've just heard from all of us around the room, I think, just about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was actually.
If I can respond to that question, Councillor. So it's just an editor's note, so it's just through a interpretation. So there's no actual change to the parking standards. It's just through practical implementation. There's a just discrepancy, I suppose, in terms of the building code of Australia and the accessible parking standard and how that relates. So it's just to clarify that interpretation. So that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Mitchell, would you like to sum up?
Very comfortable, me.
All right, put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, with the exception of Councillor Villiers and Way. Carried. We now move to agenda item number 17. Not been advised of any notices of intention to repeal or amend the resolution. Agenda under item number 18, notices of motion. We have a notice of motion from Deputy Mayor Polty. It's listed in the agenda. And over to you, Deputy Mayor.
So then mover and
Oh, sorry, mover and second first.
That's what told
Are we on the 18?
Sorry. Yeah, agenda item number 18.
Move.
So moved by Councillor Julie Talty. We need a seconder for the motion. Councillor Mackenzie.
Would you like to speak?
Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, the details are all in the notice of motion, and it refers to the memorial notice that I spoke to this morning. Mrs. Gail Thomas was a long-term resident of the Redlands, living on Giles Road since 1967. She was a very active member in the community, and she has been working with various community groups, and particularly equestrian groups, over all of those years. And when we brought in our tracks and trail studies shortly from memory after 2012, might have been 2014, I think, we formed a reference group with all of the users of our tracks and trails that included bike groups, walking groups, orienteering groups and so forth. And Mrs. Thomas was a member of the equestrian community, and in particular the Red Rivers Trail Group under APRA, and also had been a member of the Redlands Horse and Pony Club for many years. She was the reconnaissance person for organised trail riding, so she would go out and she would ride prospective trails, identify any issues with safety or access, and come back and report that through council. And she worked closely with our officers as they developed tracks and trails to educate them on the concerns for safety for equestrian use of tracks and trails. And she had a very good working relationship with some of our officers, such as Lex Smith and Leo Newland. She's highly respected right across the local horse community, and as a result of her sudden passing on the 26th of May, many people have contacted me to see what can be done to remember her contribution to the tracks and trails and the equestrian community. the family had a private memorial for her with their funeral arrangements, understandably, because it would have, the number of people that wanted to attend would never have fitted in any memorial place. So the members of the local equestrian community are working to put on an annual trail ride in her name in a place that she liked to attend and ride with her horse Squishy. And they have asked if appropriate piece of infrastructure or a trail could be named in her honour as part of that first inaugural ride. So this isn't seeking to tell the officers which piece of infrastructure, but it's seeking support from council for them to go ahead in a timely manner and identify what might be appropriate. And then, as is the council's policy, we have policies for naming parks and benches and so forth. We don't actually have a policy that refers to this specific thing. So the officers suggested that if this motion were brought, that would allow them to work to identify a piece of infrastructure or a trail or whatever's appropriate, and then another paper will come back next meeting to say we think it could be this or that, and seek councils to support that thing being named in honour of Gal's contribution across those many decades. So I'm just seeking your support to allow officers to work with me to identify what we might be able to name as part of this process. Thank you.
Speakers against?
Speakers against?
Just a comment.
Yeah, comment, Councillor Boglari.
Oh, thank you. I like the idea that we do trailheads or parks for people of such notoriety and value. Like, they've given so much back to our community. But I mentioned the other day, recently I was actually asked who Eddie Senator Juliana was, which is strange to us, but that's what happens with the amount of new people we've got in. And I mentioned that when we do such a thing, that we put a sign, and of course Councillor Mitchell updated me and said a QR code. Something like that I'd like, when the officers are considering this and future ones, if there was a QR code with this lovely lady's history and why we did it to honour her, I think would be an added benefit. And I just wanted to add that. Thank you. Just for consideration. Thank you, Councillor Tolby.
Thank you. Do you have anything further to sum up?
No.
Councillor Mitchell.
You updated me on a QR code now.
Well, I'm sure there'll be new things. Thank you through you, Nick. Get with the program, Councillor. No, there are ways to honour these people. I guess it is a question, and I haven't gone back and read the policy, so very supportive of the motion. I'm sure it's within. My question within the policy is there a start date for a suitable piece of infrastructure, and the naming is there, but are there opportunities for an end date? Because depending on the infrastructure, it will have a life cycle. The history of an individual is always going to be there, but are we locked into forever having a certain name? I just want to know there's that flexibility within the policy to have it adequately honoured, but there is an exit strategy, if I can be that way, if necessary in the future.
That's a
question for the officers.
separate issue. We can take that offline.
There's no policy, so therefore there's no.
Yeah. Just something to add to the discussion.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
All right, then I put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor is absent. Agenda item number 19, I'm not aware of any urgent business. And now we move into agenda item number 20, confidential items. Councillors, can I have an indication if we need to move into confidential?
30 seconds.
I think we should have a discussion on 20.2, if that's possible.
Someone saying yes, so yes.
Yes. Someone saying yes, so yes.
Right. Right, we're now moving into the confidential portion of the agenda in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. To discuss the matters listed in the agenda, we must move into closed session. Can I have a mover and seconder that the meeting moves into closed session? Moved by Councillor Bulgari, moved by Councillor Hughes.
Seconded by Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, seconded by Councillor Hughes. I'll put a motion.
Those in favour?
Those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Councillor Rendell.
Councillor Rendell, yeah. Those in, carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Bishop's out of the room.
No, Hewlett.
Sorry, Hewlett. Too many councillors. Councillor Hewlett.
That's more just wait for you. Yep.
All right, we're now moving back into open session. Can I please have a mover and seconder that we move out of confidential and the meeting proceedings resume? Moved by Councillor Bishop, seconded by Councillor Colley. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Rendell. Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Thank you. Now we will vote on agenda item 20.1, voluntary transfer of land concession. Item 20.1, do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Rendell, seconded by Councillor Bulgari. Put the motion, those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Agenda item number 20.2, rating exemption application. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Put the motion, those in favour? Those in favour, sorry, is Councillor Bulgari, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Rendell, Deputy Mayor Tolty, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Colley, Councillor Bishop and myself. Those against, Councillor Golly and Councillor Hughes. Motion's carried, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Agenda item number 20.3, register of fees 2425. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Bulgari. Put the motion, those in favour? Councillor Bulgari, Mitchell, Golly, Rendell, Deputy Mayor Tolty, Mackenzie, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Colley, Councillor Bishop and myself. Those against, Councillor Hughes, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Agenda item number 20.4, disposal of land on Russell Island. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Rendell, seconder, Councillor Bulgari, I think was first. Put the motion, those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. Number 20.5, telecommunications facility leases. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Bulgari. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is out of the room. Is absent. Agenda item number 20.6, Sub-Regional Waste Alliance Materials Recovery Facility Project Update. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bishop, seconded by Councillor Bulgari. I put the motion, those in favour. Carried unanimously, noting that Councillor Hewlett is absent. That concludes the meeting. Councillors, please ensure your attendance has been logged in diligent boards. And I now declare the meeting closed at 13:31.